Good morning. I'd like to call the August State Board of Education meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge that all board members are present except for Jim McNeese. And I'd also like to welcome everybody back to our August meeting, those of you in attendance. And what I'd really like to do is just take a moment as we are in August, and several of us have spoken this morning about all of the schools that are getting back in session. I know a lot of the teachers and the principals and all the staff have been working hard at the schools, getting classrooms ready and the schools ready, and getting everybody back to school. So we really would like to welcome everybody back to school. A number of school districts are starting this week. I think maybe a few started last week. Some are starting next week. So we really, that's what we do. We do school. So we're excited to have the students coming back and the parents. It'll be a great opportunity to start the 1920 school year. So that's hard to believe. Also, I just want to make mention of, since school is starting, that also means the buses are rolling. I saw the big yellow buses making trial runs yesterday in Wichita, and I think the Topeka buses are out today. So there is a new promotional campaign out in the state of Kansas for school buses. It says "Stop on Red, Schools Ahead." We will be receiving a report, I believe, maybe later tomorrow from Board Member Porter to talk about the School Bus Stop Arm Committee, and that information from that group. So we'll be hearing that. But as folks hear and see those big school buses going on the roads and those school bus arms are out, please stop and allow those kids to get on those buses and disembark safely at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So again, we want to welcome everybody back. The mission of the Kansas State Board of Education is to prepare Kansas students for lifelong success through rigorous, quality academic instruction, career training, and character development according to each student's gifts and talents. And the vision is for Kansas to lead the world in the success of each student. At this time, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, if you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we also want to take a look at the agenda, and if there's any changes or additions to the agenda. If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Motion to approve by Dina, second. Jean, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, it looks like a 9-0. We also have the July minutes, so I'd like to see if there's any additions or corrections to the July Board of Education minutes. Okay, if not, I'd take a motion to approve the agenda. Ben Jones, second. Yes, thank you, the minutes, thank you. And a second, Steve Roberts. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, 9-0, thank you very much. Okay, then we'd like to welcome the commissioner back to school.
Back to school.
Back to school. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. As Kathy mentioned, it is an exciting time, and I've been out and about with a lot of back to schools in the last couple of weeks. We'll continue that after the state board concludes our meetings on Wednesday. I'll be a little bit in central Kansas, so I think I've been just about at all sectors of the state. As it's an exciting time. As we go forward. I I joke oftentimes when I'm out, and all of you know this, I pick on either Oklahoma or Missouri quite frequently, depending on the location that I'm generally at. If I'm down south, I usually pick on Oklahoma. If I'm more of the east or not close to Oklahoma, I pick on Missouri. But wherever I'm at, it seems to get a good chuckle about leading the world is better than beating Oklahoma or Missouri. And it really is just meant in jest. But it makes me think, and I say this all the time to people, because people say, well, do you know what's going on in fill in the blank, Idaho, New Jersey? And yes, I mean a little bit because I read about it or I've had conversations. But the truth is, in some ways it doesn't matter, because this is uniquely a Kansas thing, born out of what Kansans said they wanted, born out of your struggle with, well, how should that look? And then the continued of 67 school districts, over 160 schools, trying to figure out operationally, how do we put this on the ground with the success of each kid. Ben and I had the opportunity to start our morning in Valley Center yesterday, and a video, and I'm going to share that with you, that I think illustrates not only the vision, but it also illustrates individual plans of study if you think about it deeply enough. But before we do that, I was reading a quote late last night. Some of you know Peter Drucker. He's kind of a management leadership guru. Long before John Kennedy said, let's go to the moon, Drucker had been asked by President Roosevelt at the start of World War II to serve on the economic engine of how we were going to get prepared to actually go to war. This after Pearl Harbor in the early 40s. And Roosevelt said, all right, we need to produce 30,000 fighter planes. And Drucker knew that the Economic Council, the people working on this, had estimated that the best that the United States could crank out would be about 4,000. And he thought, Roosevelt is senile. He's lost his marbles. There's no, I mean, this is not just we set you a lofty goal. This is impossible. 30,000, and we can only produce 4. This is the best minds, the manufacturers of what we have. Even if we ramp this up, 4,000, and 2 years later we built 50,000 fighter planes to deliver to help win the war, among other things. And we had a great calling for that. Just like when Kennedy said we're going to go to the moon, this is not an easy task. If it were, then everyone would go do it. It's really hard. And so when you're out in the schools, I just ask this, the struggle's real. And I tell this of every school. So, Janet, if you're over at your old alma mater at Turner, people say, where do I start? Start with one kid and one family. Just one kid and one family. I was down in Southeast Kansas, Jim, and we had this conversation over lunch. And we were talking about a young lady who is woefully behind in credits. Meeting with the parent, said, I think I'd like to be a nurse. Now, this young lady isn't going to graduate high school. She's so far. I mean, she has like 9 credits, and she needs 24 to graduate, and she should be a senior. And all of a sudden, just by saying, get the parent, get the family, how are we going to create a better life, right, everyone? They were devising a plan, going to have a conversation with mom. They'd already had a little bit of this, where we're going to enroll her in the community college as a CMA, try to get that accomplished by the end of the first semester. We're going to get some teachers who are going to literally try to teach her, tutor her, to get the standards taught so we can validate that. And let's see where we're at by December. Let's see how much we can accelerate. That's as simple as it is. Now, what's hard, Gene, is how do you do that for every single kid at Garden City High School, and how do you schedule it? I mean, that's the dilemma. So when you're out in schools, encourage them to start with 1, 2, 3 kids and 3 families that aren't being successful, and then work on it, right? Work on not lowering the standards, but work on different approaches of how we get there as we go forward. And so I hope you like this, because I liked it. And Ben, I think I've got the volume where we can actually hear it this morning. I had trouble hearing on stage yesterday. Pretty creative. Pretty creative. You got Simon's vote, by the way, if you want to know the rest of the story. So I want to share with you a couple of examples of how we're making progress on your goals, and and then ask for your permission to go out and solicit some work and answer some questions. So we're going to announce today the new 2019 Civic Adequacy, that's easy for Jim to say, right? Network Award winners. So just a little bit of a reminder. It's to recognize schools that actively pursue those students in civic engagement, which is one of your goals, and collect those practices across schools in the state. Now, there's a variety of things that you have to do to win this award, and it's school by school. But we have some schools that while they didn't accomplish all of the goals, they have some promising practices. And we're recognizing these schools, these 3 schools, as promising practice award winners. Bernadine sits intermediate school in Garden City, Derby High School, West Middle School, and Lawrence. So we want to acknowledge them. And then for the schools that win the entire award. So I always think of Sally whenever we do these, because I know how proud she was whenever some of her schools, and she and Janet would kind of, in a good, lighthearted way, go at it. So if you see any of your schools, you can feel really proud of. These are the winners for 2019. Whittier Elementary in Winfield, in Americus, North Lyon County Elementary, Topeka Seaman High School, Shawnee Mission, Northwest, South Barber in Kiowa, and Swaney Elementary in Derby. So I want to congratulate all of them. That's a lot of work that they put forward, and to sustain this, they have to go out and help mentor other schools of how to really engage students in civic engagement. I know you'll want to honor them, and if you want to come to Topeka, we will honor those schools on September 17th, which is Constitution Day, right next door, and a Memorial Building Auditorium from 1 o'clock to 2:30. You all are welcome. I know Peggy will send you reminders as your calendars are very full in September, but hopefully you'll consider that as we go forward. Also, in case you haven't noticed, we have some amazing things going on with early childhood, and a grant that we worked on with some amazing partners, notably the Children's Cabinet, Melissa Rooker, the Executive Director, the Department of Children and Families, and Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and others. There's a lot of people working on trying to go out and ask Kansans, what do you want from birth to age 4? It's very similar to what we did, but let me just give them a lot of kudos. They've gone to 53 different community engagements, and you can see all the places. Brad and I only went to 27. I guess we were slacking off. But they've done remarkable, and many of those, they did a couple, like in Topeka, I know they did like an afternoon and then an evening session at the same place. And many of you have visited those and been a part of that. I'm not going to steal all of Amanda and Melissa and the rest of their thunder, because they're going to report to you in September on the results of this, but I wanted to just give you a snapshot and keep you up to date on it. And they took this off of the original work, went out and asked Kansans, what bright spots, services, or attributes does your community have to support infants, young children, and families? Really, what do you like about your community in that space? The second question, tell us about your vision of what you would like to see for early childhood in your community. And then third, what gaps do you see between what that vision is and what you'd like to see? So those are the 3 questions that they've asked. And again, many of you have been a part of that. I'm not going to read these. These are just some quotes. Again, I think Amanda, when she reports with the partners in September, will go over this. But these are just some quotes that came out of a few of those sessions with people that, what I was amazed at is how many people brought their kids to the sessions. And there was a variety of people at those. So you'll have a copy of this if you'd like to read this later. But I thought for sure, I work 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. I'm lucky to have a good network to pull it all together. Shift work creates havoc, always has. But with more mothers working than maybe in previous generations with shift work, it does create some challenges for people. So some opportunities then for you to continue to be engaged. There's where you follow the updates, childrenscabinet.org/early childhood. Again, you'll have this copy. On the 23rd of the month, the Children's Cabinet will meet to start to digest some of this information. And in September, as I mentioned, you're going to get the full briefing of the needs assessment reports that have come in from all across the state, and KU's kind of tallying that for us. On October 7th, the Governor's Symposium on Early Childhood will be in Wichita. And then November, there's a next phase to the grant, a due date for the federal implementation. So now that you have this data, how would you go about implementing a plan? Kansas will apply for that. It'll be extremely competitive. We don't know if we'll receive that, but those are kind of the dates going forward. Are there any questions about the Civic Engagement Network or the work being done on early childhood right now? And again, we're just one part of many agencies working on that birth to 4, and just asking the question, what should it look like, right? Asking parents and community members. We might have an opportunity, and I want to answer your questions as best as I can today, because the landscape has changed at the federal government, and it relates to ACT testing. As you know, 2 years ago, the legislature passed that any student in a public school could take an ACT test and ACT work keys at no cost, and that was implemented this past year. And we saw, especially in the urban areas, a significant number of first-generation kids take that exam that had not taken it before. There's been some shift at the U.S. Department of Education, and we believe we might have an opportunity to use the ACT exam instead of our 10th grade state exam for accountability purposes with the federal government. Previously, that was not allowed because the ACT was determined not to meet any of the existing 50 state standards, and you had to test exact standards. And so what had to happen is that you could use the ACT, and then you had to add back some state assessment, and the length of period was fairly long and cumbersome. So if we did this, we would eliminate just the 10th grade exam, replace it with the 11th grade, and every kid, barring the 1% of special education kids, would take the ACT on a date specified by ACT. It's a half-day exam, as you know, so they would shrink their window somewhat from there. We could possibly then combine that exam with ACT work keys, if you wanted to, through accreditation. The federal government will not need work keys as part of their federal accountability. You may want, the state's paying for that right now. You may want to keep that through accreditation if you want. That would be another half-day test. So in theory, a student could do this in one day. I think most schools would probably do it over 2 days just to break it up, but it could be done. So here's the ask, and then I want to answer questions you have around this. I'd like to go to the Superintendent's Council in September and ask them, what do you want to do? I then would like to go 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, to the curriculum leaders here in Topeka, and that would be before your October meeting, and ask them the same question. And survey them, and then bring that data back to you, good, bad, or indifferent, and say, here's what the superintendents and the curriculum leaders. The curriculum leaders have curriculum people, some principals, and some superintendents. That would be our biggest try to get as many people as possible. And then bring that back to you, and if the answer is yes, they would like to do it, then we would put it on as a receive item in October. Because in order to get it done, we have to go to an RFP on it this fall to do for the spring of 21. Couldn't do it, this. And then obviously there's legislation that has to take place because it would be done in every accredited school. So I'm giving you kind of the surface level, but it looks like the federal government would be agreeable and has agreed to some other states doing this. So I was with Gene out in Southwest Kansas and Northwest Kansas too, in Oakley, and we kind of already asked them. We posed it. We didn't formally say, hey, vote, because I was out there. And I would say overall, both in Oakley and in Sublet, overall, it was generally fairly favorable. Not without a lot of questions, but fairly favorable. So with that, Madam Chair, that's the ask today. I'd be happy to stand for questions as it relates to this or anything else that's on your mind.
So board members, Okay, the hand waving, I think for most people is working. If not, raise your hand, let me know. Steve?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I want to read just a brief snippet from No Dream is Too High, Life Lessons from a Man Who Walked on the Moon, Buzz Aldrin. But before that, I got from this book the name John Houbolt, Houbolt. I don't know how we would pronounce that name. But John was an engineer at NASA. And without John, we don't go to the moon. And I didn't know that until I read this book. NASA was concerned about how do we build a vehicle that can survive leaving Earth's orbit, riding on a rocket, orbit the moon, and then land on the moon. And they were having a dickens of a time trying to figure it out. And John H. came up with this idea. Let's have two vehicles. Let's have two. Let's have a lunar module and a command module. And of course, that's how it worked out. Until John's vision, it wasn't doable. It was kind of interesting to read that. So this is from page 31, and I wanted to share this because it's addressed to parents and teachers, parents and educators, if I may. Parents and educators often ask me, Buzz, how can we help foster the sort of innovation that took you to the moon? First and foremost, it is important to understand that whether by nature or nurture, innovators approach the world differently. Keeping that in mind might help you regard your boss with greater respect, or your artist friend, or the kid who wants to sit around playing his guitar all day long. Certainly some people are born with innovation in their veins. I think I was. He writes, I think I was. My father loved flying and exposed me to the possibilities of flight early in my life, but something inside me responded far beyond what my father might have imagined. I also think that innovation can be encouraged when parents and educators understand that innovators often do not fit the norm. Innovators whose minds are open tend to have personality traits that others might regard as quirky or sometimes even weird. They're dreamers, and I'm definitely one of them, so I know that innovators are rarely content merely to dream. They won't stop there, especially if they receive some encouragement. They will become doers. They will make things happen. Innovators are usually much more self-confident than their peers. They are inner-directed and willing to march to the beat of their own drums. But it sure helps having someone lay a hand on a shoulder or look at the innovator in the eye and say, I believe in you, you can do it. I felt compelled to share that because I think it fits our mission quite nicely.
Thank you, Steve. I think it does too. And I think we listened to, while I was at Jeff West, I know Ann wasn't able to join me, and as I said, Ben and I were in Valley Center. Everyone's talking about relationship. It's that pat on the back and encouraging every kid to reach for something that you can't see yourself. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Steve. Ann?
Thank you, and you'll have to help me, school me on testing because I haven't really dug into it a lot. But I thought in 10th grade we did like a math test, but are you saying there's a comprehensive test, or are we just going to use ACT to replace the math and English?
Yes, we're going to use ACT to replace the math and the English and the science exam.
But I thought that the ACT was more of an aptitude test, and our tests were more of a knowledge test. Is that?
No, ACT is a knowledge, college admissions exam.
Okay.
So were ours. Now, ours were written directly to the standards. ACT
Right.
has their own set of standards. Ours are somewhat aligned, but you cannot say they're directly aligned to ACT.
Okay. So you think they're pretty close to our standards then, or?
Close?
Close.
Well, I want everyone to remember this because I think we often forget. When we left Common Core standards and created Kansas, there is no textbook, there's no curriculum that will align to Kansas standards. And the reason is we're too small a state for anyone to pay attention to us. They write for Texas and Colorado. So anyone that says, hey, we adopted X and it meets the Kansas standard, not without manipulation. I mean, that's just true. So, and some match and some do not. and we would shift it from a 10th grade exam to an 11th grade. Now, it wouldn't show up until that kid graduates because you don't actually release it till the graduating class. So, but it could be done
Okay.
if we want to pursue it. And there'd be lots of things we have to get okayed, but I don't even want to go down that path if no one in the state of Kansas wants to do it. There's a lot of work to be done. There's pluses and minuses to this, by the way.
Jean?
Can we find out how the standards compare and where the gaps might be?
We'll try to get you a crosswalk. Peggy, if you can make a note of that, we'll ask Beth to get you what we call a crosswalk of the two.
The other question I had is, would it include the writing portion of the SAT?
No, it would not include the writing portion because the federal government does not require writing for accountability. So all we would be doing, because right now any kid can take it at no cost to the student or the family. This just simply meets the federal accountability of moving it in that role. I mean, otherwise we can keep it just like it is now. It'd be voluntary for any student to take it.
And it would also be at no cost to the student?
That's correct.
Okay.
The difference would be right now it's for public school students, and if we move in this direction, it would be for accredited school students. And primarily, I'm going to generalize, that would include the Catholic schools and the Lutheran schools and a handful of others that are accredited by you. Because it has to be for federal accountability through that system.
Ben?
So on that, will, for those students that do not attend a public school, that currently we do not cover the cost of the ACT, correct?
That is correct.
Would we then adjust to then providing that to the private school?
Yes, it would be if they're accredited.
If they're accredited, yes.
Because then they have to take the state assessment, and the state assessment would now be the ACT, so it would be provided for them.
And would it be, since we're in the middle of KISA and year 5, we have 200 odd some systems in front of us that year. What's the timeline if we go forward? What's the timeline of the implementation? Will this be something for this current school year, or would it be?
No, it would be for the spring of 2021, be 1 year away from this school year.
But
so
it would be
2021 school.
But it would be the year before most of the districts should be accredited.
Yes. They would still have the same state assessment in grades 3 through 8. This is just replacing the 10th grade.
Yeah.
Jean Clifford?
These are great questions.
Do we have any information on any other states that utilize the ACT for this purpose?
Yes, but I don't have that off the top of my head, but we'll get that for you because there are other states doing it.
And is there any information from higher education as to the success of students who are tested in that way?
I don't know the answer to that, Gene. I know that the Board of Regents was very supportive of the state paying for the ACT. I believe, I haven't talked to the Board of Regents, we'll be meeting with them in September, but I have talked to Blake. He's supportive of this if we were to go forward because all the Kansas universities and the private university colleges in Kansas use it as admittance and scholarship and which courses to take to some extent. There are also, I know the Board of Regents is going to talk to you about qualified admissions, which are a series of courses, and whether to continue that or go to some kind of GPA, ACT combination. So now, the accommodations that ACT makes are much less than what the state assessment is made through KU. Time is generally, they get more time, but in terms of I can have it read to you, and they're going to limit that because they're using it for a college admission exam. So there's pluses and minuses, and you may want to talk to the districts that you represent. I would, if I kind of sense a consensus, I would go to them in September. I would then go to the curriculum directors in October, and when we come back in October, I would just simply share the results and the comments that they've given back to you.
Dina?
Thank you. assuming, and as you indicated, there are some negatives to this. Could you maybe be clearer about what the ones you're thinking of right now that there would be in regard to making that change?
Brad's probably listening, and he'll run downstairs very quickly if I don't give the
If you
correct
forget
answer
one.
to this. But I can tell you the two that come to mind. First of all, when you do a state assessment, Kathy, you'll know this well, there's a whole host of accommodations and modifications we do for special ed kids. So I'm gonna use like it's this many. That's gonna shrink to this many. So I think that's a concern that we're gonna have to just address, and I think other states have. The other, once upon a time, when Diane was still here, you were discussing a bouquet where a student through an individual plan would take the exam, say if they're going in the military, their exam would be the ASVAB as their final, right? The federal government, though, is clear. Every student for accountability has to take the same exam. And that shot the bouquet out of the water because we were going to have kids take different exams based upon their plan, and the feds never approved that. Some kids aren't going to go to 4 years of college, and we're going to make them set for a college admission exam. Some people would see that as a negative because it's not a voluntary, it's you must take it. I see that as the two biggest ones, Dina, but I'm sure there's some others. Now, there's some positives. So I think, you can have a great discussion about this, but there's not without some negatives to this. I think the biggest positive you'd hear from most principals, I won't say all, is the kids don't take the 10th grade state assessment serious at all. They don't see any relevance to it. And most kids are going to see a relevance to this because voluntarily over 75% of kids are taking it now. Maybe. But I think the two biggest ones would be special ed, and some kids aren't planning to do it, so will they take it serious? No, and then scores go down, and, scores are going to go down if every kid has to take it.
That must have generated a few more questions. Ben Jones.
Thank you. I know I'm using my twice mulligan here, I guess. But I did have this question originally. I just forgot what it was.
There he is, see?
So, yeah.
He's watching from the 6th floor. We're talking about the pros and cons, specifically the cons of it.
So I did have a question about the special education part of it, piece of it, which you just addressed. But also you talked about a 2-year delay in reporting. You just briefly mentioned it, and I was asking clarification.
The students would take it.
Yes.
But then they would be reported as the class of 19 did X on that exam. So they'll take it in their 11th grade year. Yes. And then as they graduate, that score will be what their score was on their state assessment for that year. So there's really not, don't think it's a delay of 2 years. Okay. It's just in the way the federal accountability will count it. Okay. It's counting that way right now, but they're taking it in 10th grade. So.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Jim Porter.
I only have one question. I just hit the button twice. So I'm concerned about the accommodation issue, and the only thing I wanted to say is that we've really reached out to the disability community, and we're trying to build better relationships. And in our discussion, and I'm sure that's going to happen anyway, but I would need to say that I want to make sure that they're involved in the discussion so they understand that, and if there are adjustments that we need to make, we can do that. That's all I have.
Thank you. If you would like, why don't I have Bert just survey the special ed directors? I won't get everyone, but then we can also try to have a conversation because I won't see them directly between now and the time that we would meet in October. Their conference is already passed in August.
Well, I support asking the question. I just want to emphasize the need to make sure they're involved in the discussion.
Looks like maybe Brad's here. He may want to add something.
Dina asked about the negatives of doing it, and I said for me, would be accommodations related to special ed, and that some kids wouldn't be planning to go to a 4-year college and therefore wouldn't be planning to take the ACT. I said, but Brad's probably listening and would sprint down here if I was saying something wrong. And so.
Okay, well, I think that a lot of food for thought. It sounds like the board certainly wants you to go out and solicit information, and then we'll hear back from you definitely in October, and maybe just kind of an update in September as far as what you're beginning to get some information. You know, my experience was, I kind of share a lot of the questions that folks said, but I definitely do know those 10th graders, for the most part, do not take their state assessment seriously. As much as we try and we do different things to help them with that, they really don't take it seriously, whereas, again, the majority would take the ACT very seriously. So, you know, it'd be interesting to ask some students, too.
Yes.
I don't know if we'd have an
some
opportunity.
experience with this as a superintendent, 'cause
Yeah.
we gave it in McPherson.
Yeah.
For accountability, and every student that was not exempt out of, with an IEP. McPherson's a different community, as every community is different. And when we announced that, I believe it was the class of 2011, if I remember right, they gave the principal a standing ovation. But that's a fairly high-achieving community, and most of those students were planning to take it anyway. So I don't want to generalize that to every community.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down, Brad. Never fails. I now declare the Citizens Open Forum of the Kansas State Board of Education meeting open at 10:40. The State Board provides this opportunity for citizens to share views about topics of interest or issues currently being considered by the State Board. The State Board asks that speakers identify themselves by name and the name of the group they represent, if applicable. The State Board also asks that each speaker focus their remarks on issues or topics, and personal attacks will not be tolerated. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Any board questions will be for clarification. Our first speaker is Mason Rowletter, and if I butchered that, I apologize. And after that will be John Richard Schrock. It looks like you have some information. If you want to give that to Peggy down here, she'll pass that around to us, so we'll have an opportunity. So, Mason, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for seeing me this morning. I know I don't have much time, so we'll do this in brevity here. My name is Mason Rowletter. I'm a research assistant in population health at the University of Kansas School of Medicine in Wichita. Recently, I completed my Master's of Public Health degree, and part of that is completing a capstone project of our own choosing. My personal research interests include physical activity and community system integration. So for my research project, I titled it The State Board of Education Attitudes Toward Physical Activity in Kansas Schools, a Qualitative Analysis. So in the folders that you're receiving now, you'll have a few pieces of information. In the left sleeve, you'll have this executive summary that I'm reading from right now, just kind of a mini agenda. A project report also in the left sleeve with the abstract and appendices. In the right sleeve will be the project presentation slides from my capstone defense. So if you ever wanted to look at the presentation, you can look at the bullet point information on there. You'll recognize some of the quotes undoubtedly as they are yours. A little bit of the background here. I'm going to run through the abstract in just a few seconds here. So the background: physical inactivity has become increasingly prevalent health risk behavior in the United States. Schools have been recognized as an ideal target for physical activity intervention for two primary reasons. First, schools reach a relatively large part of the population, and second, health behaviors regularly practiced at a young age are likely to be continued into adulthood. So that's really the premise of my research and why I thought that I should target the people, the stakeholders with the most information to offer. Because Kansas students generally experience a sharp decrease in physical activity engagement from 6th to 12th grades, it's been suggested that policymakers need to institute more comprehensive physical education requirements in Kansas public, middle, and high schools. However, we have a gap in literature, and like I said, that was y'all's opinions and perceptions, your attitudes on what physical activity really means in Kansas schools. So I set out to do a qualitative study just to get that information, and these kind of things are very exploratory, in-depth interviews, asking open questions, and again, thank you for being so accommodating with your information. We did these from 6 in the morning over the phone to 8 in the night over at phone. People came into my office. I met other people at their offices. Got a 90% response rate, which is excellent for this kind of research, so thank you. A little bit of findings here. Mainly what we got out of these interviews were 4 themes. First theme, and these questions that I constructed were basically about issues that former research has brought up in the state of Kansas. Themes that we saw: role of schools in physical activity engagement, 2, benefits of physical activity, 3, the barriers to increasing opportunities for physical activity in schools, and 4, the most viable strategies for increasing physical activity opportunities in Kansas schools. Now, each of those had several sub-themes as well, and you'll see in your executive summary, you'll see in your report that those sub-themes are elucidated a little bit more detail in there, but I think I'm running really close. Okay, next steps. We're looking at building on this with future capstone projects. There are a few more students in the next generation of MPHers that are looking to build on this with surveys of superintendents. We're working with USD 59 for some integrated physical activity and service learning projects. And it's also been submitted to JOPR, the Journal of Physical Education, Research, and Dance. Recreation and Dance, excuse me.
Mason, thank you. I think, most of us did participate in this, and it was very interesting, so we appreciate getting the report. I'm sure board members will take a look at it, and then if we have information we want feedback on, we'll probably have somebody reach out to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is John Richard Schrock. Welcome.
Howdy. Apologies for no tie. This is spontaneous. Board Member Ma had a question about the nature of different questions and testing. It's called Aptitude versus Achievement tests. So if you walk into a good teacher's classroom before No Child Left Behind, you might find a science teacher asking the students on one day after they had been covering diseases for a while and reading the book and so on, okay, mad cow disease. And the students say, wait a minute, it's not in our book and you didn't tell us about it. Yeah, but where would we look for the disease agent? Well, what did Robert Koch and Louis Pasteur do? Oh, yeah, they went and injected from a sick animal to a healthy animal, and it got sick the same way. Yeah, but where would we look for it? Would we look for it in the stomach, or, okay, it's mad cow, it's in the brain. Okay, now here are the results of the test when we do that. Okay, and you get, a healthy animal gets sick when you inject the brain into that, and now here's what we have as test results. What does that mean? Oh, okay, so that is the tissue that caused that. That is an example of aptitude, the ability to look at a new problem that you have not memorized, okay, but solve it because of the previous things that you learned, and you learned it in depth, okay, and you learned to apply it and synthesize and put 2 and 2 together. Okay, that is different from an achievement test. An achievement test is what the state test basically is. And when you start putting pressure on teachers that your school is going to be ranked and then take away tenure and you could be fired, those scores better go up. And it takes time to do this other. And we got to get those scores up. So they do exactly what they do in China. They memorize. What's the previous test like? Aha. And we'll go for that type of memorization. That's achievement, okay? And so you've had several people come in here with graphs over the last many years. Dave Trabert from Kansas Policy Institute and another colleague from Wichita, and show here's the scores going up on the state. It's an achievement test, but here's the ACT, and it's not going up. Okay, and that impresses me, the extent that teachers can turn around and teach to the achievement test. Okay, but what they've done is given up on the critical thinking and the problem solving and that type of thing. And I've had to write letters for teachers that are getting out of teaching and going into something else because they're up to here with being told how to teach, when to teach, how to teach it, and taking their textbooks away and told they have to do everything online. Okay? So I am joyous when I hear the commissioners say, because I have often wanted to substitute one for the other, and because we've had SATs and ACTs, ACT for this state. Actually, they proposed to go to an SAT 2. That was an achievement test in California, but they never really accomplished all that. So that is a difference, and it's an important difference, okay? And it's made a big difference as far as when they get to college, because now they're not asking questions like they used to. Thank you.
Thank you. The State Board Citizen Open Forum is closed at 10:48. We would like to thank our speakers for sharing their views with the State Board. The State Board will determine if any issues should be addressed as an agenda item at a future meeting. So thank you both. Okay, our next agenda item, I believe Tammy is here to share with us. Sounds like maybe Jay is in Liberal, so Tammy, you get to join us today. We appreciate you coming and joining and sharing some information about the Gemini 1 and 2 schools. Looks like we've got a few more that we'll be looking at today and get some information from you.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm just trying to find where my presentation is. Can you come help me? Okay. So yeah, we have a little bit of unfinished business. This is just a continuation of when Jay and I were here last month. So happy August. It's already been quite busy, so we're really excited to share with you that we have added a couple more districts to our list. So, let's see here. Goodness. So if you'll take a look at the handout that Peggy gave to you, entitled Gemini 1 and Gemini 2 Schools, you will see that all of the ones that you approved last month, the 2 districts that we have added where we have had confirmation from their local boards include Geary County, USD 475, Lincoln Elementary School, Westwood Elementary School, and Junction City High School are cleared to launch for this fall. And we also added Southern Lyon County, USD 252, Olpe Elementary School, Neosho Rapids Elementary School, Olpe Junior Senior High School, and Hartford Junior Senior High School. So those would be the 2 that we are added to launch. And then I wanted to give you an update on Santa Fe Trail, USD 434 Overbrook Attendance Center. If you'll remember last month, I brought them to you as being cleared to launch. But since the last board meeting, they've had some changes in administration. We, as an agency, actually hired their elementary principal. And so they were looking for an interim principal. They have a brand new superintendent who was in a redesigned district in another part of the state. So when I conferred with him, he has decided that he would like for Overbrook Attendance Center to have some time to regroup, get a new principal on board, and he would also like to plug them into regional trainings that will take place in Lawrence to kind of shore up what they were planning to do. So therefore, he would like for their school to step back a little bit, and we will reevaluate their readiness to launch later on in the school year. So with that, we've added our list. What's been fun about this last week is that we have met with all of the schools that are ready to launch. We had a kickoff last week where we took them through some of the things as part of their phase 1 ignition, where they were solidifying their measurable goals, figuring out how they were going to measure the effectiveness of their strategies that they're implementing. We brought in experts to guide them in creating a really robust communication plan to keep their family and community engaged throughout this launch year. They have been given a building culture survey so that they can keep their thumb on the pulse of the climate and culture in their building. And they had an in-depth dive into data quality and how to make sure that the data they are collecting is worth making decisions off of. So we did meet with all of them last week. This is just a reminder that everyone that the Launch Readiness Committee clears for launch has either participated in a robust coaching, one-on-one coaching, or it has participated in the regional trainings. And so with that, I would ask that you consider approving these other 2 districts, Geary County and Southern Lyon County, to be ready to launch this fall, which is right now.
Thank you, Tammy. Board members, if you're looking in your agenda, that's on page 25. It lists the specific schools. So Ben Jones had a question or comment?
Comment, and then I'm going to make a motion if that's okay, Madam Chair. First of all, my comment is I'm glad they're both there. Their board meetings occur after hours last month. That's the reason for the delay, hence why they weren't approved. And I'm glad to say they're both District 7 districts on there. So I'm very glad to see some more from my region of the state jumping aboard. And I know I share Geary County with Dina. So Dina and I get a half a credit and then Sutherland County. So I have to give credit where credit's due. I like to move. Of course I do. I move that the Kansas State Board of Education accept the Gemini 1 and Gemini 2 schools identified as a go for launch for the 2019-2020 school year.
Okay, we've had a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Dina? Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that looks like a 9-0. Or go for launch.
Fantastic. I did want to let you know that the 10% of schools that weren't quite ready to come before you, we are working with them individually. And so their launch plans will be approved throughout the year. So we will likely bring another batch to you for approval maybe in January. So we are working with the ones that weren't quite ready. So no one has been lost yet.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you coming and joining us today. Okay, our next agenda item is to act on recommendations for the Kansas Education Systems Accreditation. And Michelle, you're up.
Do you not see Jeanette up there?
No, I do not see Jeanette up here. That's why I was kind of looking at you and.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. This is in your agenda, page 27, board members, and there's a lot of accompanying information after that. So if you want to refer to that in your agenda item, page 27.
Madam Chair,
Michelle.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner Watson, thank you for the opportunity to bring these systems to you for approval of their recommended accreditation status. You have had this list. We've communicated with you previously about these systems, and they include public and private systems. And so today we are asking for a motion to recommend to approve the status recommended by the Accreditation Review Council. And I'm happy to stand for questions, as well as Jeanette is as well.
Jeanette's heading this way, huh? Okay, board members, do we have questions? Yes. Jim Porter.
I brought this up last month. I'm going to support this motion, whoever makes it. But in two or three of these things, it listed at the bottom that somebody was going to review after 2 or 3 years or something like that, and I'm really concerned about that. About us being maybe kept aware of the results of some of those things, because I hate to, because if it was stated that there needs to be that there has to be a concern, or that wouldn't have been there.
Right.
And I would like for us to be apprised at when those times come up, whether or not they have successfully completed the issues that were of concern.
Absolutely, and we'll bring that information to you in follow-up. I appreciate your comment and support and awareness of that as well. Thank you.
There was also a few in this group, I believe it was, because I know some of these, if they're north central, they only had to have one goal, and we are asking for 2 goal areas.
Correct.
So as they begin in this new cycle, they will be establishing that second goal.
Yes,
So
and we continue, I'm sorry to interrupt, we continue to refine our processes with them as well.
And the board may be interested in that other goal. I don't know, particularly if that school district is in their area. So they might be interested in that.
Okay.
Further questions, board members? Okay, if not, we have a motion. Dina? If you want
It
to.
is
There we go.
I move that the Kansas State Board of Education accept the recommendations of the Accreditation Review Council and award the status of accredited to USD 115 Nemaha Central, USD 258 Humboldt, USD 362 Prairie View, USD 365 Andover, USD 396 Douglas, USD 428 Great Bend, USD 435 Abilene, USD 484 Fredonia, Ascension Catholic School, Christ the King in Topeka, Holy Trinity in Paola, Holy Trinity in Lenexa, Nativity Parish, Peace, Prince of Peace, Sacred Heart in Ottawa, Saint Benedict, Saint Joseph in Shawnee, Saint Gregory, Saint Matthew, Xavier, and Holy Cross Lutheran, and to move Zion Lutheran School to a 2022 evaluation year in the accreditation cycle.
And Andover is 385.
Yes, did I say?
You said 6, but that's okay.
Said it wrong.
Yeah, that's what you said. Okay. Do we have a second? Second? Oh, Janet Waugh. Okay. It's been moved and seconded for the accreditation. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so we have an 8-0-1 vote. Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. Okay, our next agenda item, as we move along, is to act on Kansas Educator Preparation Standards for Driver Education. And again, this is in your agenda at page 85 with the attachment in there afterwards. So, Michelle, looks like that's you too.
Thank you.
So welcome again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Last month, I came to you all with the Driver Ed Kansas Educator Preparation Program Standards, and today I would like to ask for your approval so that we might move those on to our institutions of higher education so that they can implement programming to allow candidates the opportunity to take coursework and place that Driver Ed endorsement on their teaching license. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we know, Michelle, approximately, because I know, I know several districts that several years ago dropped the driver's ed because of budget cuts. So do we know about how many folks have driver's ed programs in their schools? Because a whole lot of folks now rely on private companies in their various areas. But do we have any idea on that?
We do. Robin, between last meeting and this one, did a little research on that.
Okay,
and
great.
came up with around 130 of our systems.
Okay, so about 130 of our 286 or 7, I forget what it is. 286, okay.
Correct.
Okay, we do have a few questions. Ann Ma?
Thank you. Do we know how this new set of guidelines compares to what the existing programs would have had? How many hours? It just looked to me like a lot of hours to learn to teach somebody to drive, an expense that somebody would have to go through to get this certification.
So it's 9. It's 9 credit hours.
Yeah.
It's 3 courses. And I think the folks that did the work on this took the instruction very seriously, especially with the opportunity for our students to be so distracted while they are driving. So it's comparable to what we have done in the past with a lot more intention, I think, on that area of distracted driving.
Yeah, but 9 hours, come on, that's a lot. But
A lot of other states have
more.
really?
Yes, we did. We did do
24
those
hours?
comparisons, and we are
Jeez.
actually one of the states, I think, if I remember the work Robin did.
most of it's
It's not very many. It's 3 courses, and some require many more than that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Steve Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was privileged to be an over-the-road truck driver for a year, and I worked for 2 companies, and they each taught the Smith system, so I'm going to teach that to you right now. It won't take very long. The mnemonic device is all good kids like milk. All good kids like milk. So that's AGKLM, and A stands for aim high and steering. It's a good idea to look down the road. If you're in a truck, you want to look a quarter mile down the road. But in any vehicle, whether it's an 18-wheeler or a 4-wheeler, you want to look down the road as far as you can. G, get the big picture. Soak it all in. You're driving in a residential area, kids playing, there's some construction. piece of curb missing, whatever. Get the big picture. It's always good advice. K is keep your eyes moving, especially checking your mirrors. Very important when you're driving an 18-wheeler, but it's also important when you're driving a 4-wheeler. L, leave yourself an out. Very important to leave yourself an out. If you're on 3 lanes going the same way, you don't want to get between 2 big trucks in case one doesn't see you. Another example might be you're leaving the 4th of July fireworks, everybody's leaving at the same time, and it's out in the country, so you're snaking across the railroad tracks. Obviously, you don't snake across the railroad tracks bumper to bumper. You leave yourself an out. And M, one of my instructors said this is the most important, make sure they see you, which is very problematic because how do you know for sure that they saw you? But that's very important, make sure they see you. So let's review. Aim high in steering, get the big picture, keep your eyes moving, leave yourself an out, make sure they see you. The reason I remember that is because I've been trained. The problem I have with this initiative is there's all sorts of training out there that people have been through, and you don't seem to appreciate that. So when I came in here suggesting that you don't necessarily have to go to teacher's college to be a great teacher, I wasn't suggesting that teacher's college is a bad idea. I was simply suggesting that there are other avenues for people to get the learning and the experience from substitute teaching and a wide variety of things. So I will be voting against this because I do think it's heavy-handed. And actually, I think it's selfish on the part of the department. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, board members? I might just follow up. What was the previous qualification for driver's education license?
Very similar to these. It was 3 courses along these same lines, and the group that did the work compared previous to anything new since that time and came up with these 9 hours.
Okay, so the standards have just been reviewed, but basically the hours are comparable to what we had before.
Correct.
And when the teachers in schools, again, and I'm talking schools because there are a lot of other ways to learn to drive. Some folks just, their parents teach them. So what, for the most part, are schools, is it a semester class? Is it a summer class? Does it vary when the teachers are teaching in a school?
Most of them are in summer. They'll do driving in summer, and then they'll do the book work maybe the semester previous or some combination of that. Again, we allow for that option and opportunity at each individual system level to decide.
Okay.
And if you'd like more information, I can have Robin round
No,
that
that's
for you.
fine. I just thought probably most of them it was if I remember correctly, most of them it's probably a half credit that they get as far as graduation is concerned, which I assume then is an elective, I guess. Okay, do we have a motion? Jean?
Yes, I would like to move that we accept the driver's education standards that are proposed.
Okay, so you move that the Kansas State Board of Education adopt the Kansas Educator Preparation Program standards for driver's education.
Correct.
Okay, and Mr. Porter seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, opposed? 1, 2, 3. Looks like we have 6-3.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The noes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I need to look and see if we're about. Okay, actually, we're running a little bit ahead and we're ready for a break. Jeanette, are you back with us?
I am. I'm here. I just have, I'm going to put up the PowerPoint.
We finished.
Oh, you finished?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We ran early.
That is really good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break, so if we could be back at 11:20, and then we'll do our update on school safety and security. So we'll take a little break. For all of our presentations today, but we're going to have an update on school safety and security, and we've got several folks here today that we're looking forward to listening to, and with the school year starting, this is a very timely presentation, so we appreciate you all being here today. So Susan, welcome, and I'll let you introduce your team.
Before you this morning and sharing what our new unit has been doing over the last 10, 11 months that we have been together. I am Susan McMahon, the Director of Safe and Secure Schools Unit. With me is John Calvert, who is my assistant, and he does a lot of the training and exercise on the road and is a key vital part to our unit and being successful this year. Also, we have, and I'll show you in the presentation, we have 9 state stakeholders that work with us that are on my executive advisory board. And one of those is with us today, and it is Special Agent in Charge, Kelly Ralston with the KBI. He is also the Deputy Director of the Fusion Center, and he is the liaison for Interpol for the state of Kansas. So he is with me today. So what we have done throughout our time is these are the Executive Advisory Committee members. When we were developed under Senate Bill 109, Section 76, it's stated that we had to be in partnership with 4 agencies. But when we delved into 109 and created the 9 standards that you approved in December, we saw the need to bring on more state stakeholders, which also gave us more resources to provide for our school districts. And so these are our 9 stakeholders that work with us. So these are our standards, our 9 standards, if you remember them from December. So, and we'll talk about the grant monies too that were given out and how it was done. So quickly, infrastructure protection is how to harden your facility. Security technology systems are the camera systems, the buzzer systems, the different things they can do to have eyes and ears around their school. The radio communication system is the standard number 3 is directly is how are they going to communicate with law enforcement when they come on your campus in an event, or how are you going to deal with any first responder? And then the 4th one is communications to the community. How are you going to get that message out to the parents, to the community, that something has happened on your campus, or what is transpiring and where they need to go when it comes to reunification with their children. And then the crisis plan is number 5, and we've had crisis plans turned in that are 8 pages long, those that are 174, and then a class 6A school had a 5-inch ring binder. Yeah. So what we have done is created a template on our website that helps these school districts kind of make their plans similar in nature, but cover what is specific to them. And so we have that template available for any school district to use on our website. And we go into testing exercises and training. So we need to test our plan. I mean, I have a strong planning background and I can write the most beautiful plans, but if the boots on the ground can't do the job, then the plan is worthless. So this is how we test their plan and see where the gaps are. And we don't exercise plans to find fault. We exercise plans to make sure that all of our gaps are filled, and how we can help those school districts fill their gaps when they find them within their training program. And then this year also, we'll also talk about the fire, tornado, and the crisis drills. Last year, under Senate Bill 109, Section 98, I think was the fire marshals, it threw 16 drills at the schools that they weren't ready for. So the fire marshal and I had a conversation, and Senate Bill 128 was created. So we collaborate we're teaching them how to collaborate over the local level. So we have 9 state stakeholders that work with us. We're trying to get the school districts to emulate that at the local level so they can have that partnership and that firm foundation underneath them should any crisis happen upon their campus. So we're teaching them how to, not everybody talks the same language when it comes to education and the way we do our jobs. So how to talk and engage with law enforcement, fire, EMS, emergency management, the hospitals. Getting everyone engaged at that local level it will be very beneficial for the school districts and how they plan for any crisis that happens. Firearm safety was in the bill, and it was directly pulled out of the bill. So that was if you choose, it's a choice, to have firearm safety within your school district, you will either use for K through 5 Eddie Eagle, or from 6 to 12, you will use the state's Wildlife, Tourism, and Parks Agency Hunter Safety Program. So the grant this year, for this year, only touched on and was very narrow in scope to standards 1 and 2, which were on infrastructure protection and the security systems. So we have collaborated. This is a project-oriented grant, so the school districts had to build a project, and we had to bless that project to say that that fell into standard 1 and 2. Our executive advisory committee also sat in on those meetings and voted on the projects, and we moved that forward. Last month, you voted on dispersing that grant monies, and it has been dispersed, and the school districts are working. This only is for a year, so those projects have to be finished, and the money has to be spent by June 30th of 2020. And there was some comments last meeting about the monies and that how we dispersed it was per pupil. And some of them didn't get all the money that they asked for. So we're teaching them how to build their projects in phases. So let's build phase 1 or phase 2 and say how much that's going to cost. We've also talked to school districts of how to work with their vendors. If you can't do the whole project, will they do the project in pieces? And they're having success with that. Let's at least get a piece in place of your project, so you can work towards those standards that we have. It was brought up last month about safe rooms and tornado shelters. So this grant monies, there is not enough money in the one that the legislator gave us to do all safe rooms and things like that. But there is an avenue for safe rooms. And it comes off the state's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which is ran by the Kansas Division of Emergency Management, which is under the umbrella of the Adjutant General. And so when we have a hazard or a presidential declaration in the state of Kansas, some of that monies is set aside for hazard mitigation projects. And so if a school district is involved with their county emergency management, they have been and are part of a county or a region's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, and they have adopted that plan, then these monies become available for them to build safe rooms and have those safe projects inside their realm of what they are working. So if there's a school district out there that is interested, please have them contact me. I used to work for the Kansas Division of Emergency Management, so I know how this grant works and where the monies can come from and how we can build these projects to better serve our school district safety. So in these crisis plans, we are narrowing it down in Senate Bill 128 to at least 3. We encourage more, but the minimum is 3. And across the state of Kansas, there are 22 hazards that have been identified. And right now, the school districts have basically been working on sheltering them in place, run, hide, fight with an active assailant, those kind of things. But I want them to broaden their horizons and to start really thinking about what are the disasters, the top 5 disasters for your region, because there's 7 regions in the state of Kansas, and they're a little bit different for each one. But we really need to be starting to focus on earthquakes. Almost every region in the state this last year, especially this summer, has had some form of an earthquake. We've had a couple this summer over 4.0 in the Richter scale. We really need to start paying attention to our earthquakes because we have 2 to 3 earthquakes a day. Most of them are under a 3. And so we really need to start. That is not a skill our children have, nor our staff or anyone, but that is something that we need to start to ingrain into our worlds is the earthquake drills. And we do have them, the how to do an earthquake drill on our website too. Extreme temperatures, we're getting into the extreme temperatures of the summer and of the winter. I think from where I live in Douglas County, it was like the most that they had off of school in a very long time because of the winter and different things. What are you going to do when these extreme temperatures start affecting your school district? And are you going to call off class, shorten your days, you know, those kind of things. A lot of people don't test their plan on that. The other one is hazardous materials. That has a lot to do with evacuation and sheltering in place. Most of our schools are built on a major highway or near close enough one to a what's called a safe zone that they would have to evacuate. Especially even in the active shooter, it goes into the active assailant, active shooter program of sheltering in place or evacuating the schools. So we're trying to show them that some things that they've already tested on can be used for different hazards that we face in the state of Kansas. So in Senate Bill 28, it gave us a great avenue because the 16 drills that were out of Senate Bill 109, that's an appropriations bill. So that only lasts for a year. So it went away June 30th. So we needed something in its place to take place so we can keep crisis drills in the forefront of their thought process, but also keep the fire and tornado drills together. So the fire marshal and I, we compromised on a few things, and we brought his wording to the Council of Superintendents in February of last year, where someone in that room created Senate Bill 128, and it was passed and signed by the governor in April. So what it does is there is 4 fire drills now, 2 tornado drills in September and March, because we have 2 tornado seasons in the state of Kansas now. And so that is under the preview of the fire marshal's office. And then under our direction, under Safe and Secure Schools Unit, at least the 3 crisis drills, we will oversee those drills. But when a fire marshal's inspector comes to a school, they are going to inspect to make sure all 9 drills are done. They will report back to us to make sure because we don't have enough staff to go around and check every school if they've done their crisis drills. So we're partnering with them. Again, they sit on my executive council meeting advisory board, and so we work closely hand in hand with all of his people in his department. So what we're here about today is the suspicious activity reporting. When John and I were hired, we started this unit October 1st of 2018. A couple weeks later, Kelly and his boss, who is the deputy director, Frank Papish, approached us and asked us to have a meeting with them. And so we did, and they gave us this concept that they were working around. It took us about 8 9 months to get this actionable and forward. It is a federal-based kind of program, but the KBI has brought it down to the state level, and then they have worked on it with their IT to bring it down to the whole community level. So this is available to anyone across the state of Kansas, but we are really pushing it into the schools because we know when it comes to reporting and the children know what's going on or the children suspect, but it's that lateral movement of knowledge when we need it to go vertical. So this is the easiest way to make that knowledge go vertical because it's anonymous. It's a way for them to report. It's a way that children talk because we have a QR code, and we'll show you when we get to that point. Kids know how to use these QR codes, and all they have to do is text and send, and it's done. They don't have to talk to anybody. And so we were trying to think of something that we could make it so the kids it's user-friendly for anybody, but that the children would pick up on it faster. So what you do is this icon of you call it the googly eye guy, at the special, is on our website, on Safe and Secure Schools website, and on KBI's website. So when you click on that icon on our website, this disclaimer page comes open. So it tells you what suspicious activity is. And then it also has a disclaimer. If this is a crime in progress, please dial 911. or the crime number, that 800 number that is on there too. So this is basically, and the way to teach suspicious activities, and Kelly says it a lot, is if the hair on the back of your neck stands up, we need to know about it. There's something there telling you something is wrong. And so this is the best way to do a repository of information, to start gathering that data across the state, in a way that we can actually action the information that comes in. The KBI has provided their analysts, their crime analysts. John and I, about 5 people, Kelly, Frank, and 3 of Kelly's field operations guys, intelligence. And then we have a clinical psychologist sit on a committee that has created this product. And so their analysts, we built a matrix for their analysts to grade the information that is coming in. They've also worked with their product company, and they have keywords, that if keywords are in that reporting sentence, then it will contact them immediately. So we can, right now it's not stationed 24/7, but the notifications are coming in 24/7, and somebody is watching those. So those are the things that we did. Down here on the bottom where it says learn more and help identify and report, those are links that go straight to the Department of Homeland Security that gives you more information about suspicious activity, crime in nature, and terrorism. So when you open up the tool, when you click on that icon and you click start the report within being on a computer, this is what you see. So the only things that you have to fill out is what is in red. So under threat category, I'll show you when I go to our website and drop it down. It has several categories to choose from. And then what you saw or what you know is what has to be put in there. If you know any of this other information, it is great. It is a benefit to have. So we encourage that. And like I said, it can be done in less than 2 or 3 minutes, the whole process. At the bottom here, there is an icon, I would like to provide my contact. You could click it and give them your information, or you can leave it unclicked and you become anonymous. So it will give you a receipt number, and even if you do report it anonymously, you can still call back in to the KBI, give them that receipt number, still remain anonymous, and they can tell you how they actioned your tip or your information that you have given them. And when that comes in, so here's our website. We'll do it live. Can I do a test? Sure. Okay. This is what it looks like from our site, and it's everything I said. So we'll start a report. All right. In the drop-down box, you get to choose from if it's a threat against a critical infrastructure, cybercrime, narcotics, officer safety, school threat. So we'll do a school threat. We'll just take. And I'm not going to click here, or you can give your information, or you unclick. Kelly, it'll ding Kelly's phone here in a minute, and there's your tracking number. So that's how they keep track of it. So when that information does come in, it is, like I said, we have a matrix of what they use, the things that they are looking for. If it stays criminal in nature, it will stay with the KBI, and the KBI will notify the local law enforcement, and if it's school-oriented, they'll notify us and the school that it is involved with. If it's terroristic in nature, it will move to the Fusion Center. If it is bullying, it will move to us if it's non-life threatening, and then we can action it with the superintendent or local law enforcement. And then if we do obtain like suicidal or mental health information, like I said, we have a clinical psychologist that's on the team. He will analyze it, and we will get it to the right agency in that person's district for them to utilize that. what we have done for the schools is built underneath here resources for our schools. So we have built where they can make like little labels that has the QR code on it with the school safety hotline number on there. And that will help us tie them together through both of those. We have a QR code that they can put anywhere in the school. And then we built these posters that we will show you here in just a few minutes as what we have provided for our schools to use. The QR code is right there, so if you get your phone out, if you want to play with your phones, do you want to put that up there and pass out the poster next? The QR code, all you have to do is open up your camera, or if you have a QR code reader on your phone, you just hover over it. It will open it up and pop it into a usable mobile way to use this information and how to use the SAR and the suspicious activity reporting tool. And you can go in, and so that's what this is how we foresee children and those in school using it, is scanning that QR code, whether in the hallway, the bathroom, wherever, going in and texting what they know and sending it. Like I said, it takes less than 2 minutes when you use the QR code and go through it and be able to do it.
I'm sorry, do you have to have the app first?
No.
Okay.
It's not an app yet. We're working on that. That's a strategic plan forward.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. So our team, like I said, criminal, mental, and school threat perspective is what we have built this team on. We have 5 KBI, 2 safe and secure schools, and 1 clinical psychologist. Now we have one of Kelly's directors who's over the analyst. She sat with us last week on our meeting. And then we had discussed about creating a school subcommittee, having a superintendents or SROs, student resource officers, counselors, different people kind of be a subcommittee of this one committee. That way we can get more of the school's perspective when we have a school threat. So this is what we have out. This is the poster that we are going to publish and put out for our school districts to use. It's called Choose Peace. I have to kudos to Denise's group and office for creating all of this. There's been many state agency meetings and things that we're talking about wanting to group everything together, suicide, bullying, school safety, and suspicious activity. We've got most of it together. So what we have done is Kelly has worked with the Highway Patrol, and the school threat violence hotline comes into the Highway Patrol dispatch. And they have their matrix that they use, but they are also going to move that information into the SAR, the suspicious activity reporting tool for us. We need to build this data because last year the violence hotline had over 300 phone calls, but only 54 were actionable. They were actually an incident and something school-related or child-related in nature. So we're trying to get that, because that is still out there, that phone number is out there, and by law, we need to keep that phone number and that activity going. The acts of bullying is the Kansas Children's Service League. They support that and run that with volunteers, and that's an anti-bullying hotline that they use. We are working with them, and then the KBI and their products that they have given us. We are one of the first, maybe a handful of states that has pushed this out to this level, to the local level, to the school districts to use as a tool to start curbing violence within our schools and our communities as a whole. Because with our school safety, that is a whole community approach. It's not just a school district problem. It is a problem for the whole community. So, and that is what we are working towards. The biggest thing I have to, because we're going to push this out, We had a team meeting, I guess, with 2 other teams here in the Department of Education, and they loved the poster and they want to use it for the anti-bullying campaign, the beginning of October, and different things. So we have other agencies, even the KBI wants a couple posters to put in their headquarters. This is what we're doing and how we're partnering to keep Kansas safe. And it's just not our responsibility as an agency or theirs as an agency, but it is a state responsibility to keep our community, our visitors safe while they're in the state of Kansas. So with this, John has also created this one. You want to hold that one? So this poster, we're going to go back and forth. It's going to be on our website. It's going to be on our website too, but it follows the Department of Homeland Security, see something, say something, and we added here something. And we got their blessing to use their information. So that is gonna be an option 2 poster, and it will be up on our website. So when you go back to our website, so that is where these resources come in for our schools. There's a letter of how to use the suspicious activity tool within the school. There's a big QR code that we have provided for them that they can post anywhere. The QR codes will be on the posters and the phone numbers and everything attached with them. Same with the labels. Everybody, and I don't know if every 286 school district has MacBooks or tablets, whatever they use. Slap one of these on one of those and they will always have it with them no matter where they're at. And then the Choose Peace poster, and then this one we got okayed yesterday, and that one will go up online too. We built these so schools don't have to spend money, that all they have to do is print it off and use the resources that we have provided for them. We have also provided for them information on classes, free online classes, and one from TEACS, which is Texas Engineering Extension Service. It's out of Texas A&M. Just had another class come out for free. I'm taking it right now. I started it yesterday. But we take these classes before we put them out, so we know what the school's staff and superintendents will learn when they do take these classes, and they're free for them to take. And then we have other resources that we have available for them and that we can get. And just, if you are in the neighborhood in Wichita on September 23rd and the morning of the 24th, we are having our Safe and Supportive Schools Conference. We do have a national speaker coming, Dr. Stephen Soroka, to start off our conference with. And those are the things that we have done over the past 10 months. So I stand for questions.
That's a lot of information.
I know.
And
We've done a lot.
Yeah, it really is great. So Susan and John and Kelly, thank you for coming and presenting today. You know, when you showed the list of all the people, the agencies that are working together, it shows you how powerful that is, that you can all come together and work and create things that are helpful. And hopefully that's a good model for the local districts too, to see the different organizations that they can work with within their local communities and to use these resources. You've obviously come up with a lot of good resources. I've gotten some feedback in my local area too, so we appreciate the update and the presentation. We have some questions. So Michelle, start with you.
Thank you. That is a lot of information, a lot to digest here. I do have some questions, and maybe something you can talk to me afterwards or during a break. So if a child or student, and maybe there's several students that see something and then they use this, and maybe they see, you're looking at the data and you're saying, okay, they must have seen something because it's simple. We're coming up with cues or saying they've seen something in the school. Are there counselors available to those students? Obviously, let's say it's another student, so that's a minor. And we have laws and stuff that protect these students with information. Are these students in the schools being reassured that their voices are being heard? Is someone coming to the student, and let's say the student thinks they saw something, and then maybe that other student is no longer at the school, and maybe they've been moved, maybe we don't know as a parent, because sometimes those children will come home and tell us, not always will they tell their parent, but they'll say, this is what I saw today, I've informed staff or informed someone in the school. How can we be reassured as parents that it's being done, because there are so many things with privacy laws now. All of a sudden that student is removed from the school, we don't know what happened, we don't know if the voice of the child was answered. That's just something I have as a parent with a child in a junior high and a high school. How do we know that those are being answered? I mean, how do we know? I mean, you're saying, yeah, as the experts, we're taking care of this, law enforcement is taking care of this, but how does that student know? Because maybe it is anonymous, or maybe they've given their name. Are they going to that student and saying, this has been taken care of, or your concerns have been answered?
Right. So we've had several phone calls like that already, before even the SAR went live in May. So what we have done is we usually go to the superintendent, ask them if they're aware of X situation. If they are, we ask them how they've handled it, and has the parents or anyone been notified. And then teaching the parents how to follow the chain of command. If you're not happy with how the teacher handled it, then go to the principal. Not happy with the principal, you go to the superintendent, the Board of Education, well, your school board, and then to the Board of Education. We try to reach back out. Anybody who has called us, asked us to look into anything, we have always gone back and said, this is what we did, this is who we talked to, and this is what we were reassured is happening, and that you need to have a conversation with X person, because they can't give us all the information because of all those privacy laws. So whenever we had that this last year, we have reached back to the reporting party and said, and told them exactly every step we took to handle what was brought to our attention. So if it's on one of these reporting tools, then, and it's non-threatening, it will come to us. So again, it will be, if we know who to talk to, or we have a school, they say a particular school in that note field, then we will reach back to that superintendent and say, hey, we got an anonymous report of X. How are we going to follow through and see how the action steps are?
Yes, because students talk,
yes,
and they spread maybe misinformation.
Right. So
I just want to make sure that we diffuse the situation. We've taught the counselors are on it and know that that's not what you saw. We have the valid facts. I mean, you don't have to get into it. I mean,
right,
with the child, but this is what you might have thought you saw. I just want to make sure that that's diffused, and it's not like. Text can spread like wildfire, social media, and I just want to make sure, to protect that family. Maybe there was something, you see something and it may not be what you actually saw, or thought you saw. So I just want to make sure that to kind of reassure parents and the students, so that they want to use your system, or they want to use that anonymous system to make sure that their points are taken seriously,
right,
or maybe counselors, like I said, could come to them and say, that's not exactly, we want to get the truth out there, but we can't go into all the information for privacy. So those were my questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Jim Porter?
I want to go back to the standards. Did I hear you say that firearm safety was not removed from the standards, but was removed from the law?
No, it is.
No.
We pulled the
something.
firearms safety piece, standard number 9, is pulled directly verbatim out of the law. So we didn't do any creativity with it or anything. The law specifically states that if a school district chooses to have firearm safety within their schools, that they will use Eddie Eagle, or they will use wildlife parks and tourism.
Okay, I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. That's
Ben Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have 2 comments, and then Mrs. Ma can't get her speaking application, so that's part of this as well. So I'd ask that you recognize her after my 2 comments. First of all, thank you for expanding the scope of the committee. As part of school redesign, we want community partnerships. And when we model things like this from the state level, it shows up to the local district. So thank you for being an example for our local districts to follow, to work with their local law enforcement and set an example of how to do that. And I appreciate it as well. And also for all the hard work I know we can't prevent it 100%. It's impossible to absolutely prevent any sort of disaster, but we can do our darndest to keep, we have to do everything we can to stop it. And we have been blessed to not have a major school shooting in Kansas recently. We've had some church and some other things like that, but we haven't had media presence on a national scale because of a school disaster recently. It's been a blessing, and it could just be a matter of time. I don't know. Who knows? But we need to do everything we can to prevent this from happening, and I think this is a good way forward, and we're getting out ahead of it versus trying to scramble and react to it. So I appreciate those efforts, and then I turn it over to Mrs. Ma.
Okay, Ann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, like everybody, we appreciate all the work you've done because it looks like a really good resource for school. One thing that concerns me when I talk to superintendents and I go, did you hear about this resource? And they go, no. And I go, well, it's on our website. But then going to the website, you play heck finding it. I mean, like, I went to the School Resource Center page, and a suspicious activity report thing's on a separate page, that it's not in the drop-down menu, and you have to, Google it, if you will, on our site to even find that. So I'm worried about the distribution. How is this, does schools all know about this, and is there student training? And
Right, so we did put it out on the superintendent and principals listserv when it actually went live in May. And so they know about it. John has done 5 in-services so far in the last 2 weeks and pushed that out. We've told them since April that it's coming, that it's here and ready and able to be used. And so we are doing it that way. Also, it'll be at our conference and different things like that. So we're trying to push most of our people to our web page. So, because that has everything they're going to need. If you can just go to agency, drop down to Safe and Secure Schools, it's right there and ready to be used, sir.
In addition, the first Council of Superintendents meeting, they'll be speaking there.
Okay.
At that time, reviewing that. And it's kind of interesting. Men made a point, and back to Michelle's comment, the school safety hotline, how many threats have been diverted because of that? We don't know.
Yeah.
But we do know that it's set up so 24/7, they'll call a school person and law enforcement at any time. And they got cell phones. They have to have 3 to 5, and they do that. But they're on these council superintendents, and there'll be at least 100 of them right at that meeting, at least.
How about the state meeting in October? Will you guys be there making a presentation, or we have a broader audience?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I think we have a spot there.
Okay, so the main way kids access this, which is the important thing, is through that poster.
Right,
Right,
it's through.
because they're not going to navigate our website.
No, they're not going to navigate anything. If they can't scan that QR code, they're not going to do it. So apps take a long time to build. And so that's our strategic plan for hopefully 12, 18 months down the road, is to make sure we have the app that works. But for right now, we couldn't hold this. And we wanted to give students something that they could use immediately and easily, and that they could be anonymous, and that the person next to them wouldn't even know what they were doing. And so nobody would be tattling on it.
So this poster is just new out this year,
Right.
right? Okay, very good. Thank you so much for your work.
Jean Clifford.
Thank you so much. Is there cross-connection between these 3 organizations? So if they report something to one phone number, but it really should go to another, that's reported?
Right. We are working with the bullying one that is local and getting them on board, but the KBI and the KHP are already tied together. And so when the information does come in on the KBI forum, they know already exactly who to contact if something is not in their preview to handle.
Thank you. The other question I had is in regards to bullying and school violence, self-harm is also kind of intertwined in that. If there are reports of either self-harm or they think somebody else is inclined to that, is that somehow relayed to the proper individuals to handle that?
Yes, we would probably reach out to that school nurse or have the superintendent if we know where it's at. That's the key. They have to give us enough information to tell us where it's at, the location of what's going on. If we have that information, then we could either ask to speak probably through the superintendent to get a counselor or a school nurse involved in the self-harm or the suicidal situations.
Okay. And if you receive a report, but it just has insufficient information to be actionable, do you have any way to contact the person who initiated it to ask for additional information?
Not if they chose to be anonymous.
Okay.
Right? We're not going to search down IEPs to find somebody.
There's only been a couple of events that would have required us to look into an IP address, and those would be the most critical situations that we'd ever do that. But the best answer is no. Can it be done? Yes, and that's for those very special situations when there is immediate threat to life, and then we'd look into that. But it's very complex, and it takes some time to do that.
Okay. Thank you. I was just concerned about threats of self-harm and trying to reduce that aspect of it. So
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Janet Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all so much. I can't tell you how this is so impressive what you've done and what you're doing. I guess I'm going to back up on what Ann has talked about a little bit is I think maybe the one place maybe we're falling a little bit short, and it sounds like you're trying to do it, but I want to expand it, will be the community. Because I think this is extremely important, the community, because the community hear things, even people who no longer have children in school, or maybe they have younger children, that aren't in the public school system. And is this on by any chance on our Facebook page yet? I mean, I think it would be great, because I would share it on my Facebook page and ask people to share it on theirs.
Yes.
Because that would go out to lots of people in the community. I was thinking maybe we could ask our districts to take them to businesses, these posters like grocery stores, and things like that. Quick trips. I mean, honestly, because I think we're way on the way, but we need to really, because sometimes these things are pretty good kept secrets, and I don't want it to be a well kept secret. Thank you.
Okay. And that's why we have local news, that is here today reporting on this too. Our goal with this poster and this whole campaign is to get down to Wichita and be in the newsroom and get up to Casey and get in the newsrooms, and like in Kansas City, they have Kansas Today. And that's after the news, that we can share what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we want the communities to be a part of their safety with their schools.
Well, thank you very much to all of you who are here today, but then I know there's a whole team behind you that's been working on this. It's very helpful, and I'm assuming that we'll continue to get updates as you guys continue to make progress. And then the conference in September is coming up, and then the KSDE conference in October. I'm guessing you guys will probably be at that too. I think as we can continue to get this information out, and that little icon with the little whatever kind of guy you called him, the googly-eyed guy.
Googly-eyed guy.
That can be shared on districts' web pages, so that folks can go to that and report those suspicious activities. I think that's going to be real important, and hopefully can get information out to folks and can be shared. So looks like Dale's got another thing.
We're going to have some posters if you'd like to distribute at any of your schools. I mean, really, we're going to make them. We're not going to let the superintendents leave till they take a handful.
Good. We like that.
Anyway, but if you want to take some, we'll get them to you.
Well, and I do think the idea of getting them to community businesses, we all know where kids go in the communities, and some of those posters out in some community businesses would be great also. So So thank you today. We really appreciate it. I know Mr. Porter's going to speak, I think, tomorrow about the school bus.
Okay.
The school bus safety, the stop arm information, and the information that's going out about that, the new report and the public service announcement on the school bus safety. That's critical also. You know, that all comes upon the safety of our children, and so that's all tied in together. So we're gonna have a little information on that. So if the news media wants to come back and hear about school bus safety tomorrow, we welcome you to join us tomorrow. We'll even try to put it at a specific time if you want to come. We'd be glad to have you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board members, we're going to recess for lunch, and we'll return at 1:30. The Policy Committee is meeting today in the conference room in 600 North. So, yeah, we know. Thank you. Good afternoon. We're going to bring the meeting back together, and before we start our next agenda item, I want to give the commissioner just a minute to make an additional announcement.
I left out one of our schools to be recognized today, and I can't believe that someone in their area wouldn't have called my attention to that, but you wouldn't have known, so I'm joking. But Santa Fe Middle School in Olathe is a Civic Advocacy Network Award winner, and we want to congratulate Santa Fe Middle School in Olathe. So I apologize for leaving them off my list, Michelle.
Well, we look forward to having them join us on Constitution Day.
Yes.
Up here in Topeka as we recognize those award winners. That's represents a lot of work and is an exciting opportunity to recognize those schools. Okay, well, this afternoon we are always looking forward to our e-cigarette and vaping update. The task force group, and Mark is here, and looks like he has some additional members, and we'll let him get started and introduce who he has with him today also. So welcome.
I do have Jordan Roberts from KDHE with me, along with Sarah Prem and Addison and Addison Schlatter, who is a short timer with us because KU is starting up classes soon, and she'll be heading back there. But hopefully she will still be able to participate in the task force. We will keep sending her emails and giving her an opportunity to call in or come to meetings. But we appreciate this opportunity to share what the task force has been working on. As you know, the start of school this is prime time across the state for schools starting up, and we wanted to make sure that we communicated with schools across the state regarding vaping, providing them resources and sparking awareness for them. So hopefully you've received a copy of the 8 elements of a vape-free school, and Jordan Roberts headed up the subgroup that worked on developing this. On the front, you can see the 8 elements of a vape-free school, implementing a comprehensive tobacco policy, educating, informing, promoting a vape-free school, updating health education curriculum, involving students, enforcing the school policy, and supporting students for cessation, referring them to the Kansas quit line. Then the initial directive was to come back with a 1-page flyer, but Jordan felt like we needed some more information. So on the back, what you have is more information on tobacco-free and vape-free school policies. that really tries to emphasize what is needed for a comprehensive policy. And then also just an image that hopefully will be helpful to some who are not familiar with vaping products. And I do believe that there are many, many people across the state, parents who are not familiar with vaping products, who would just see them laying on their child's desk or see them in their backpack and have no clue that it was something for vaping. So this, along with links to the webpage that you see up here, which includes the Vape Free Schools Toolkit, and the link for this document, is part of an email that has been sent out via listservs. I know that it has gone out to curriculum leaders, to counselors, and to superintendents, and will soon be going out to principal listservs as well. We will also be trying to get it out through the school nurse network, and I will be requesting that it go out to the Health and Physical Education Association of the state out on their listserv. So, and I know that Jordan has her own listserv with Resist chapters that it will be going out as well. So our intent was to have something new and something specific to Kansas that we would be able to share with schools for the start of the school year. And we were able to make that happen through the work of Jordan and her subgroup. The goal of this information is not just to share it with schools, but for them to share it with their staff, with their students, and especially with the parents and guardians. And in the email, it encourages them to share that with all of those populations, because it needs to get in the hands of parents. It's absolutely critical that parents understand what vaping is and the dangers that are associated with it. Articles appear daily highlighting the dangers to children posed by vaping. I just did a quick Google search before just today, and I found the following that came up. Children in Minnesota, there are 4 confirmed severe lung injury cases linked to vaping in Minnesota. There was one about Wisconsin and 8 students last week. One that did vaping cause a man's collapsed lung. Vaping showing up in schools, and that one was an interesting article because they were comparing vaping to the inhaling from aerosol cans, so similar to huffing. Vape documentary highlights health issues, dangers associated with vaping. A new study shows link between teens, vaping, and marijuana. And the FDA looking into reports of seizures, neurological symptoms related to vaping. And all of those articles were posted in the last 14 hours. It has exploded. It is an epidemic, and we are doing what we can to face it head on. The task force will meet next Monday afternoon. And at that meeting, we will outline the next steps for each of the subgroups. We'll share feedback from today's state board meeting to help provide direction, and we will outline a schedule for the year, because we don't want this to just be, okay, we received information the first day of school. It has to be consistent, and it has to be on multiple fronts. So we will be talking about that. Jordan and I will also be presenting, I just got word that we'll be presenting at the Kansas Association of Middle School Administrators, and we will also be presenting on vaping at the annual conference. So we are attempting to get the word out. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan, who will talk about the resources on their website and maybe a little bit more on the flyer. And then I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and Addison to talk a little bit about what's happening from a policy perspective.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me again. So I'm just going to kind of go over this document that you guys have in front of you, the 8 elements of a vape-free school. So this is available on the KDHE website right now. And this is housed underneath our tobacco use prevention program section, which is where I am housed. And it's up here on the side of vape-free schools. But you can also get here through this link that was provided on this document, which is on the back. And here is, the definition of what a vape-free school is. And the thought is that anybody that received this email would be able to, look through this one-page document, find out what they need, and if they want to know more information, they could go here to this URL. And so that would lead us, I got to go back to this website. And so as you see, it has our Vape-Free Schools Toolkit that we created at the beginning of this year. And then also I recorded a webinar for this webinar was created pretty much for teachers because I had so many requests for presentations. I was just like, let's record it and put it on our website so people can access it whenever they need it. So you can either watch this video and learn about e-cigarettes, pretty much the presentation that I gave to you guys earlier, and then also you can download these slides. And we have a script of everything I say during this presentation. So if somebody locally wanted to present to teachers about this, they could use this information and present it themselves. And then over here, down here is a whole bunch of links to different resources that addresses each of these elements of a vape-free school. So the first one, it has information about tobacco-free policies, and then the second one, which is education. So here it has a whole bunch of links to the CDC's webpage, about e-cigarettes and know the risks, e-cigarettes in young people. Here there's even information for medical providers. There's tons of information here. And then information for parents, promoting health messaging throughout the school. So here are links to different posters that you can download and promote at Kansas schools. This one was created by Minnesota, but in the public health world, we use each other's resources. So we'll just use this, and I think they're pretty cool. There are a lot of cool colors. Here's some different ones. Vape isn't harmless water vapor. There are numerous chemicals in vape. So that was definitely one of the requests that we got from Michelle and Lisa Carithers that are on the task force about different resources specifically for posters in schools for back to school. And then down here we have more information about different educational pieces and resources about vape, CDC, Stanford, UT Health, and then information about empowering young people, which would lead you to resist. And then different information about policy change and things that you can implement to help prevent young people from using. So hopefully we have tons of information here that anybody could possibly want. And that we're able to change this, update this at any time. So if anybody takes a look at this later and has any suggestions for anything to add, please let me know. I'd be happy to add more information on here. And you also received another document with the other 8 elements of a vape-free school. And so this is just to share with you guys what we're doing with our Resist program. So we're providing a competitive mini grant opportunity for local school districts, Resist chapters, or potential Resist chapters to apply for funding up to $250 to one, submit their school policy so we can see what that is, because we're trying to collect school policies to know how many schools have comprehensive policies in Kansas. And then we also have a checklist for the kids to look at where their policy could be updated, how to make it more comprehensive. And then the applicants need to come up with a plan to educate students, staff, and parents. And they also need to hold an awareness day, a vape prevention awareness day at their schools. So we're hoping to give up to about 25 different mini grants for $250. So hopefully we'll get new Resist chapters and be able to help the Resist chapters that are working on this already in schools. One more thing that tomorrow I am going to the Kansas Association of School Boards to record a video for them to promote vape prevention in schools. They reached out to me, so that's going to happen. And then, we are also looking at updating our signage. So I know we had talked maybe last month or the month before about what our tobacco-free signage looks like right now. And it doesn't specifically say no vaping or no e-cigarettes on it. It just says tobacco-free grounds. So at KDHE, we're looking at creating a new sign that says specifically no vaping, no smoking, and no dipping. So everyone knows exactly what we're talking about. So that's something that we're working on. And I think that's all of the updates I have right now. If anyone has any questions? Oh, do I take questions yet? Or is that your role? I'm sorry. The next one and then start. Okay, that sounds good.
Hi, just real quick, we are working on the bill language for Tobacco 21 for the statewide, which would be all tobacco products. You'd have to be 21 or older to purchase. We've drafted the bill, and it is with the Tobacco Policy Law Center to make sure that we've got everything done correctly. So we hope to have that back by the 15th. We have already got a member of the House Health Committee and a member of the Senate Health Committee to introduce the bill. So we're very excited that we will be able to introduce Tobacco 21 in the 2020 session. So hopefully, once we've had, I feel like we need to have the representative and the senator take a look at it, but then we'd like to share it with the policy group here so you guys can take a look at it as well and provide any suggestions that you might have. So we're very positive about getting that passed this year. Oh, certainly. So you might have seen there's approximately 5 national Tobacco 21 bills. I think there's 3 in the House and 2 in the Senate. Most of the public health organization, like Heart, Cancer, and Lung, we are in favor of the McConnell-Kane bill. That wasn't always the case, but they did make some adjustments to it. So now it's a good, clean bill. If we can get Federal 21 through, there are optimists who feel it could be to the president's desk by Christmas. And as of this moment, the president has said he will sign it. So it's also an optimistic time for Federal 21. Now, if that happens, we could still go ahead with 21 in Kansas, but we probably make some modifications to accommodate the details. So we have tobacco license fees, a retail license fee that funds enforcement. That is $25 buys a license for 2 years. It hasn't changed since 1972. So we'd like to adjust that just a little bit and have some more money for enforcement. So there's some things, even if Federal 21 goes forward, there are things we're going to need to do with our state laws to make sure that we can fund enforcement, to make sure that our bill, it's a model bill that all the health groups have agreed to. We're trying not to penalize children and make the responsibility for enforcing it more on the retailers. And preemption, we don't want the bill to negate stronger laws that might be passed at the local level. So frankly, it's a pretty optimistic time for 21 and Tobacco 21 right now. Okay.
I think we're open for questions and discussion.
Okay, board members, questions, and I know there may be a problem with our speaking order app because I guess the internet's slow. So try it if you get it. If not, I'll just take hands. Looks like Ann Maw has a question.
Thank you. A couple. One is about the legislation. Does it address resale to minors or possession by minors, or the issue we've come up with the flavors and all that stuff?
So Tobacco 21 would cover all tobacco products, which would include flavored nicotine vape products. That would be, it would be illegal to sell those products to anyone 20 or younger. It wouldn't take them off the market but it would make sure that you'd have to be 21 or older to purchase.
Okay. Because I know they did away with the flavors in cigarettes a long time ago because kids, you know, and the advertising, that kind of thing. Well, that's true. Okay.
Yeah. You know, I think the flavor issue is a big issue. I think kind of order of operations, we want to get 21 first.
Right.
And then we can move to the flavor issue.
Gotcha. The other question was, if we don't follow this up with help for kids who've already addicted, then we haven't done the job. So I know you guys are going to add that to the list of things the team was working on. What are they doing with that at this point?
We expanded the subgroup that was on discipline to be discipline and cessation.
Oh, okay.
So we recognize that, again, we're seeing things with vaping that we never saw with tobacco in terms of the number of students that are reaching out and asking for help.
Right.
That we recognize that cessation needs to be part of what we offer. It's just that we don't have many models to work from, but that group is going to be looking into it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just saying that we have 2 medical doctors on the cessation team who is studying cessation, and also one of them, she's on the American Academy for Family
Pediatrics.
Yeah, for pediatrics. So she's looking at that.
Okay, because that's, to me, that's an immediate huge problem. If you can't get them off of it, then.
Yeah, and all of our national partners are all like, do you know anything new yet? Do you know anything? So it's on everyone's, you know, but we're just waiting on that research information.
Ben, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I finally was able to get back in the speaking order, so if you want to resume that, or I can go ahead, doesn't matter to me.
Mine's not doing it.
Okay, so I'm going to go. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, Jim. So it's a question on the Resist program. How many schools have a Resist chapter, do you know?
We currently have 30 established Resist chapters throughout the state.
Okay, out of 260, that's not a very high number.
No, it's not.
And is it a separate chapter from like a Defy It and the DARE program? Because I have Defy It and DARE happening in my home county.
Yes.
So I don't have a Resist chapter in my home county, but I have DARE and Defy It, which
could be the exact same thing. Yeah, so the way that we set it up is all you need is 1 adult sponsor and 2 kids to be able to be a Resist chapter. There's no real requirements. There's no like.
So they could be the Defy It chapter and be part of the Resist.
And be part of Resist.
Okay,
totally.
So it's not an either or. You could be part of that. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I talk to my schools, I'm like, because when you come in there and say, oh, by the way, if you want to, you have to create, and that's just not going to fly.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming.
Especially when you already, and I'm a firm believer utilizing the systems you already have versus building new.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I was going with that. And then, where's my list? Actually, that's my other list. Okay, I think you answered all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you need any more information.
Okay, I appreciate it. I just want to they're very active, and I want to see if they can get on board. Thank you.
Jim Porter.
Thank you. This relates to the legislation. And you sort of answered my question before, right after I pushed the button that said I wanted to talk. But we are going to be putting together a legislative agenda, and we're going to take positions. We're going to do that later this fall, and I wanted to just make sure that we were in the loop because this is something that needs to be on our list of things to consider. And that's a stronger position than we've ever taken before, and we want to make sure that this is
one of the reasons for our optimism is we are seeing that kind of support from folks who have not gotten involved in this area before. So yes, definitely want your support and help and to keep you in the loop to make sure that we can get this to pass.
And who is your representative?
Dr. Epley.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping that was the answer.
Yeah.
Janet Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding the School Board Association has recommended new policies to local boards. I was just curious if you know how many boards have the majority adopted this new policy that includes vaping?
I do not know. Angie Stahlbaumer was going to be here today, but she had another commitment that took precedent. So I will ask her that question on Monday and hopefully have an answer for you at that point.
I might be able to share a little bit. So they don't keep track of who passes policies, the Associated School Boards. Yeah, they just make those recommendations. So we tried to work with them. We have worked with them. They've been amazing in updating that vape into their policy. And so the only piece that the Association of School Boards is missing is addressing visitors too. So it doesn't have any language about visitors. It says for staff and students, basically. So the policy is great, besides it's missing that piece. But I know they are more than willing to work with us right now, and Angie's been really great. So yeah, but we could also find out more information about where that will go.
Well, I just think that if they passed a policy, they've certainly discussed the issue.
Oh, totally.
You know, so that to me is more important. I mean, not necessarily passing the policy, but discussing the issue. And I'm assuming you're doing this, I just want to verify it, but we know it's bad, but are you putting out all the ramifications, you know, of what, you know, like the seizures, the addiction, the lungs and all that? Are they being informed so they can say, hey, this is really serious?
Yes. Again, you kind of have to.
It's all skepticism, right? Because they think it's related to vaping, right? These seizures that people are having,
like the lung issues of the teens up in Minnesota and Wisconsin. They suspect it's related to vaping. They have not conclusively determined that is the cause.
Right.
So because the research is just so new, it's difficult to come right out and say that be careful. Because,
right.
I mean, you know that if a vaping device explodes and it damages your face, that was caused by it was due to vaping. But just being able to say with 100% certainty that the lung issues that the students are experiencing are related to vaping, the physicians are having a tough time coming out and saying that.
But that doesn't mean that we can't share these stories on our social media, that like the news stories that are covering this. And I mean, I'm going tomorrow to record a video, so I could maybe mention something about how it's on the news and these things are happening to the Kansas Association of School Boards.
Well, just this morning, I saw it on television before I came here. One was talking about the convulsions. The other was talking about the marijuana that I believe, I think if I heard it correctly, middle school students were 3 times more apt to use marijuana if they had vaped. I mean, that was what was put out this morning. Right. You know, of course, I know how much you see is not real, but you know.
Yeah, and also yesterday I was at Shawnee Heights High School, and the county health department coordinator was giving a presentation to parents, and I was talking to the vice principal, and she told me that on the last day of school they confiscated 9 vapes, and 4 of those vapes had THC in them. So that's...
Well, like I say, I mean, I know that we don't have we can't say the Surgeon General has determined this. I mean, I know, but there are some serious things, you know. I have a friend of the family who vapes. Mm-hmm. And apparently he has tried to quit and has been unable. Mm-hmm. You know, so I know that's one story I know personally. So.
Yeah, we can share those on our social media.
Thank you.
For sure.
Hi. Okay. Linda Shepard from the Kansas Health Institute. I just wanted to follow up on the questions about some of these health effects news stories that we're seeing, and that is something that KHI has been tracking and will continue to track. And will be, you know, we will put information out about that if we starting to follow some of this research. I mean, that's what we do, is try to track this research. And when these things come out, and the comments that were made before are absolutely correct. I mean, there are these speculations about what is causing these various symptoms that folks are seeing, particularly in teens. And so that is something that we will definitely be monitoring and would want to make well known if that research actually comes to pass, that these things are really happening. So we'll be on top of that.
Michelle, I know you're our board rep on this committee. Would you like to add some things?
Yeah, I had a
question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jordan, did we ever figure out appropriate posters for the elementary schools? We were, Lisa and David stuff, we were trying to pinpoint down which ones were most appropriate for that, because you're going to have kindergartners and first graders and second graders. Then you're going to go where we really want to target are the fourth and fifth graders, probably going into the next phase when they're going to be riding the bus with the kids that are sitting at the back of the bus and that.
No, I haven't found anything, but I'll put that down on my to-do list. Reach out to my other state resource people and see if they've done anything like that.
I was looking through all those, and there were some good ones, but I thought, well, what's appropriate going into the elementary school?
Right,
so that's
exactly.
where I think some of them were like shying away from getting those up by the 12th.
Right.
But middle schools and definitely in the high schools I was seeing those go up.
Yeah, we'll look at some 4th through 6th target posters.
Perfect.
Let's see if we can find some.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, would you want to share what you have been involved in getting the posters up?
Oh, yeah. Lisa and I were working with, and I've talked to some other superintendents, and they said, we're very optimistic about getting these posters up before school starts. I was talking to Spring Hill and of course Blue Valley. I've been in the school, so they're all up. So they said they didn't hesitate at all, because they said it's an educational piece and it's something that we don't want addiction. So we're trying to prevent, we're trying to educate, and it's not like we're trying to sell something. I mean, they were very, very eager to get those up for us. So without getting into too much detail, I mean, that's all.
Well, and Michelle had pointed out that an instance where students had, there was an assembly, and it was back east, I think in Maryland, where a Juul representative came in and had basically the teachers leave the room, and then he proceeded to tell them that vaping was basically a safe product. And a number of falsehoods. And this sparked some outrage among some parents who found this out, and a couple of mothers started a Parents Against Vaping e-cigarettes. And it has spread to other states.
It's national.
So I do believe that, these are some of the discussions we will have as part of the task force is they do, what affiliation do we have with organizations like that? Do we direct parents toward that national organization? Because we do have to face this head on.
So I think I have two questions, and one I think I know the answer to, but I don't. So is nicotine a cancer-causing drug? When the Surgeon General report came out in 65 or 64, and then it went on packages in 65, it's had various iterations since then, right, about what smoking causes. But can we say that nicotine is one of the components that causes cancer, or is it just tar and other things in the cigarette, and that's what's causing the problem?
Nicotine is the addictive substance that brings a person back to the product that has cancer-causing substances in it. Nicotine, in and of itself, I believe, is not linked to cancer. It's just that nicotine is part of tobacco, and the smoking, the tar.
And so that would lead then the possibility of Juul or other makers to say this is a much safer device. Is that correct? Is that why they're making that medical statement?
Yes.
Yes. But what we're finding is that the product, propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, all of those things that you need as that solvent inside of the liquid nicotine solution has carcinogens and chemicals in it,
right,
which could, probably will lead to cancer, but we don't know that yet.
Other questions, board members? Well, I think as you get posters and all of that, probably there's some board members that would be happy to get those out to some of our schools, as we are frequently in schools. So, and I think just this group is another example of the power of working together. When we have agencies and other groups that will come and work together and try to help deal with the problem head on. I think Mark mentioned going head on, and we obviously have got a lot of parents very interested and not happy about this either. So I think as we all continue to work together, we really so appreciate your update, so appreciate your work, because I know we gave you very short notice on this, and we said, no, we want it yesterday, and boy, you guys have delivered. So we really do appreciate that. We know there's a lot of work yet to do, because we've got to get more information out to our schools and to our students and to our parents and our teachers and everybody. But you've put together the vape-free schools information, some of the other information. I understand there's going to be an event in Michelle's area before long.
Johnson County.
Yep, so there's some things going on throughout the state. So we really appreciate that, and I'm quite certain we'll see some of you back in September again.
I think so.
So
Thank you guys.
Well, thank you. We really do appreciate what you've been doing and the hard work, and we know you guys are really working on this. So thank you on behalf of our kids, really, that are a lot of them back in school today.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, our next agenda item, we're going to move into a overview of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. And Tate, I believe, Tate's up first on this, and I'll let you introduce your person who is with you today. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I brought Maureen Ruhlman, one of our consultants who works on the Special Education Title Services team as our state coordinator for the education of homeless children and youth, which I was previously in that position for 11 years, which I know some of you recognize me from that. But we're here to present for about 10 to 15 minutes an overview, because on the consent agenda yearly in August you have grants to vote on, and we're going to present some information of what has to happen with our school districts, whether they receive these grants, and specifically for some of these grantees. The actual amount of funds that come from the Department of Ed is about $580,000 for the 1920 school year. And of that, approximately $494,000 will be on the consent agenda, which are grants out to districts. The remainder stays in-house to help pay for salaries, our professional development, and to allow Maureen to go across the state and provide professional development to districts. We're in the second year of a 3-year cycle. So in the consent agenda where you see 10 districts with over $10,000, those are grants that are being put forward to you that are competitive. And those come up every 3 years for a competitive grant. So those are going to be in their second year this year. And then you'll see 7 other grants at $2,500 each. And Maureen will talk a little more about professional development requirements, but there are new professional development requirements. So we put out formula grants to some of our other districts that don't have the competitive grants but have large amounts of homeless students. And so those smaller grants are to help them go and receive professional development at our national conference. And then one other thing I'd like to mention too before I turn it over to Maureen is on the second bullet here from the reauthorization with ESSA from 2016-17 school year is that second bullet. Previously, some foster care students were considered homeless. And under the Every Student Succeeds Act, that removed that part of the definition, but also in Title I under the Every Student Succeeds Act, they've added foster care as part of the law. And we just wanted to make you aware of that and also let you know that one of our other assistant directors on our team, Doug Boleen, is our state foster care contact.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to go back over that again, because that's a change, correct? Yeah, okay, so if you just kind of go back over that a little bit again.
Okay. So when the law was reauthorized, the Every Elementary and Secondary Education Act as the Every Student Succeeds Act in December of 15, it set forward starting the 16-17 school year that awaiting foster care, which was originally McKinney-Vento, was taken out. So at that point, foster care did not qualify anymore under homeless. However, also in the law, they set aside part of the law for Title I foster care students. So there are now parts of the law that describe how foster care students have to be served. And the two main areas are school of origin rights and transportation rights. And so that's the big key, and that's why we have to have a SEA person do that. And Doug works a lot with the Department of Children and Families on this. So I'm going to turn it over to Maureen, and then once she's done, we will take questions from you.
Okay, thanks a lot for your time today. We're going to go over some of the basics on the McKinney-Vento Act, just kind of refresh everybody a little bit, since I understand it's been a minute since we did this. Let me see if I can get this right here. There we go. Today we're going to talk briefly about some eligibility issues to the program, where the funding sources come from, and some of the district responsibilities as far as the local liaisons that undertake the McKinney-Vento responsibilities. Now, that was also new under ESSA in 2016, that every district had to appoint an official McKinney-Vento liaison. So now we have 286 across the state, and then at the state level, myself, and then of course Tate is always the state expert, and I'm taking his place. So under the McKinney-Vento Act, if you are lacking a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence, you are considered homeless. Any one of those missing, and you're considered homeless under McKinney-Vento. So fixed, adequate, regular, that's open to some interpretation, but those are the three basic requirements. Once you are determined to be lacking one of those, we further kind of categorize our McKinney-Vento families and kiddos based on their living situation. So we have doubled up. These are families and kids that are staying with friends or family, or sometimes not even a family or a friend, just somebody that they met that wants to help, living in hotels and motels, shelters and transitional housing, and then the worst of the worst, the unsheltered. And these are the people that are, that we see more often in the news, kind of under the bridges and the tent shelters and that kind of thing. In 2017-18 data for Kansas, did I skip one? No, okay. In 2017-18, our total homeless number reported to us is 8,471 kids in the K through 12. Of that, the largest number are the doubled up, and again, those are families and kids living with friends or family, or just hanging out with anyone that will help them. We call that kind of couch surfing. That's our largest number at 6,875. After that, we have shelters and transitional housing, and hotels and motels, and then completely unsheltered. These are living in cars, parks, and abandoned buildings. As we further look into some of the McKinney-Vento data, McKinney-Vento kiddos are considered special population, and then within that special population, we also have kids with disabilities and English learners and unaccompanied youth and migrants. So we're just talk for a minute about those. The 1686 would be the kids with disabilities, 1,109 students with limited English, 996 unaccompanied youth, and 213 in the migrant group. So title funding, we're the funding for the grants that Tate mentioned earlier, the sub-grants, we have about $580,000 this year. This is the second year, as he mentioned. We have Olathe, Wichita, Hayesville, the school systems up there getting that sub-grant. So that's one way that school systems fund as a requirement their McKinney-Vento programs, get a sub-grant. You also are required under title funding, if you receive title money, period, from the federal government, to set aside an amount of money for McKinney-Vento, and then the sub-grant is in addition to that money that you're required to set aside. Local funding, that would be coming from the district, and of course that's going to vary widely depending on what district you're in, and then donations. Again, that'll vary widely. The larger school districts versus the rural districts will have different opportunities for those local funding and those donations. Mandatory professional development, this is something that Tate alluded to a little earlier with the funding for the school systems that are going to the national conference. Every district is required to do some sort of professional development, and the choices that we have set forth here in Kansas are to attend a McKinney-Vento professional development that KSDE does, and that would be me. I've got a number of those scheduled already this year. And then another option is to attend the national conference from the NAE, HCY, NACE, and this year that is in Washington, D.C. And then the National Center for Homeless Education, they are a wealth of information. This is an option that a lot of school districts do take advantage of because they can do these on their own time. They're online webinars, and they don't require, the expense of traveling and that sort of thing. Basically, this is a pretty quick summary. The intent of the McKinney-Vento Assistance Act for every school district is to make sure that our kids are getting enrolled immediately and that they have access to all of the educational opportunities that every other kid in the district gets, and that any barrier to those educational opportunities is removed. So again, there's a lot of interpretation here as to what all of these definitions mean, but immediately enroll the student, that is immediate, whether you have the documentation that your district would normally require or not. Enroll the kid, get the paperwork on the back end, ensure access to education and other services. So we're talking about sports, music programs, shop, any of those kinds of things, and then remove all barriers is anything else that would come up that would be a barrier because that child is homeless. That is pretty much it. That is a very brief overview, and there's my contact information. We went through that really quickly, so we're going to open it up to questions.
Jean Clifford.
I just had a question on the doubling up. Does that include grandchildren living with their parent and grandparents?
It may. A lot of what depends on that is why the family is having to live there. One of the things when we do trainings is we really make it that they have to be doubled up based on an economic hardship. So if they've just chosen, we're going to live together, no. But like if the parents maybe gone through a divorce, domestic situation, fire, possibly an eviction, then it would be a homeless situation. And that's why when we train our liaisons, we really work hard on developing those relationships with the families because these are really difficult questions to ask. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Ann Ma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how do the districts use this money? I mean, do they hire people? What do they do?
Kind of depends on the districts. The bigger districts do use some of this money for salaries for their liaison and liaison staff. We see social workers hired sometimes with these funds. One of the biggest pieces of the funding goes for transportation because one of the requirements is to transport our students back to the school of origin. So the goal is stability. So we've estimated, working with districts, that we probably spend between $1 and $1.5 million in the state of Kansas just on transportation.
Well, because like virtually every school in Shawnee County makes a trip to the Mission to pick up kids every day, but they're not all on that list, so the rest of them are just funding it out of their general funds?
Either their general fund or sometimes some districts use their Title I. It's an allowable expense for Title I.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What as far as what constitutes if it's like a hotel, is it by 3 months, 6 months? I mean, or is it just when they're ready to go start it in the school for enrollment?
For enrollment, it would be where they are when they're determined homeless.
Okay, so it's when they consider to be homeless then,
Right.
Okay. Or under the foster care, like
if they're in foster care, they still have the same term of school of origin, but with the foster care, there's a little different process because of the possibilities of other things affecting them, and that's where our liaisons might not have a decision on that base, and it's left up to the caseworkers sometimes to make those final determinations. Because sometimes we're trying to get the foster care student out of a bad situation where the parent might know where the student is.
Okay. But once you get them enrolled, the whole thing is stability, and so you don't want to have them, we're trying to keep in that school district, in that school, and keep consistency with friendships and teachers and that, so they're not hopping, so we're not hopping around, so.
That's
okay,
exactly right.
very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kind of want to follow up on what Michelle just talked about, because I know with our foster care kids, lots of times those kids do move frequently. And one of the issues that comes up with that situation is inconsistencies in their education. And if I look specifically at high school kids, I look at kids who are getting behind in credits. Do you see, and I know it's been somewhat rectified with the school of origin piece with the homeless, but do you see some of our homeless kids also having problems as far as getting behind in their schooling? High school kids would be because of credits, not being able to get credits, but some of the other things. Do you see that with our homeless kids as much?
Yeah, we see that a lot, and one of the nice things about our graduation rules that are mandatory for our kids that have been in Department of Corrections and foster care, districts can also adopt policies to allow other students to graduate with the state minimum. And we see a lot of times with our homeless population, if we have kids that have the right credits, they can graduate with the 21 credits too. It's not an automatic process, but we have a lot of districts that look at that policy-wise.
So more folks are taking a look at that than, say, in the past.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, well, that's good. Glad to hear that. Randy.
So, Maureen Tate, when we're talking to legislators, I'm going to just use the word general public.
Okay.
Would it be a correct assumption from your standpoint that if you use the word homeless in a very general, contextual way, so the recipient, that many people might consider doubling up as not being someone that's homeless? And then how do you address that when you're talking to policymakers or anyone else, but specifically policymakers, because then you're really talking about solutions, but even parents, about, I guess most people would say, I'm homeless if I don't have a home to sleep in at night, not that I'm sleeping over at grandma's or an aunt. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, probably on the policy side, that's one of the biggest issues is the HUD definition is not as broad as the education definition. So we do a lot of work with explaining that, because with HUD, a lot of the students we cover would not qualify, but we've been working, they've started to come a little closer to that. They've put some loopholes, I guess you could say, to try to get some of these students and their families available. Mainly it's with hotels and length of time. But what we try to explain is that it's not by choice. You know, even the parents can kick them out at any time. We're living someplace that is not ours. We try to use, like when we do our training, we've got good examples. When you interview some kids, that's where we really try to show them, is the interviews with the kids, especially at DC. That's where our national organizations have really focused on bringing the students forward to tell the stories. And the one that I always think about in one of the training videos we have, it's a young man, middle school aged. The neighbors have taken them in, and he talks about he's scared every night because he's a kid that has to get up to go to the restroom every night. And he's worried that he's going to wake up the people they're staying with, and then they'll get kicked out. Well, we all know, based on some of our goals that you guys have set, that's going to make that kid struggle. If he's worrying about waking people up every night because he has to go to the bathroom just to live someplace, that's an issue. Now, the other part of your question about the doubled up and the calling people homeless, typically we don't use those terms when we're dealing with our families. We use McKinney-Vento. A lot of districts say families in transition, because if I come up to you and I talk about, because of your living situation, you might qualify for some McKinney-Vento services, There's no connotation there at all. But if I come up to you and say, because you're living in your grandparents' house, you may qualify for homeless services, that has a different connotation, and that's where you get kind of what you're saying. I'm not homeless. I have a roof over my head. We're fine. Well, we know a lot of times, even when we see with grandparents typically aren't planning on supporting a child or two children and their grandchildren. So a lot of times that's where we see this being very helpful. We also see it with domestic situations a lot of times where we have two people together, they can afford to live together, but during a divorce situation, maybe one of the parents who has the kids ends up living with a grandparent or friends. And it kind of protects them, gives them some rights, but also gets them back, helps them get back on their feet. And that was another change with ESSA, is all the rights that our homeless students have now go through the end of the school year, rather than ending when they become permanently housed.
And I'd like to add, we are seeing a little bit of awareness on the federal level when we go to these conferences. They're aware that the disconnect between the HUD definition and the McKinney-Vento definition is an issue. So when you're thinking, you know, if you ask somebody just in general, is this person homeless? If they're living in a home, then they're not, would not be considered homeless in most cases. Most people think about the communities that are gathered together under bridges and, you know, in the tent type situations.
And it's usually the question that gets asked to us. Right. Can you tell me about the homeless? Mm-hmm. Rarely would a policymaker say, can you, from outside of education, say, tell me about the McKinney-Vento kids. Right. And so that's why I asked that question, how best to address that when we're asked. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, are you focused on the students after the age of the truancy law, like under 7 and under, or just all people within that fall within that category?
Prior to ESSA, it was mostly K-12, but now there's even rights for preschool students. So it's pretty much birth through graduation. Okay. And Kansas does not have an upper age limit for schools, so there's no upper age limit as long as they don't have a high school degree or GED.
Other questions? Well, I think it's good every now and then to get an update on McKinney-Vento because there are changes that go on, and so it's helpful for the board to understand these procedures and policies, so thank you. Appreciate you coming today.
Appreciate your time.
You're fine.
Okay, next we're going on to Cheryl Johnson is going to be here, and we're going to be doing some looking at our innovative school breakfast program. Cheryl here, right outside the door. Jim's seen her. And Ann's looking for her. Give you a play-by-play here. She's coming. Okay. All right, so today we'll have an opportunity in a little bit to recognize some folks, and we really appreciate, I know this last year we've really looked at the breakfast programs to see what folks are doing, and a lot of people have done some really hard work, and I think some of those folks are in this room, so we're going to be excited to get to hear about these programs and get some recognition on some of the programs that are coming in. So we're excited for this opportunity to hear the fruits of your good work. And how many of you have the kids back in school today? Any of you? No? Okay, but maybe tomorrow or the next day, soon. Some of you next week. Okay, well, welcome to all the visitors here, and we're very glad to have you here. As soon as we get the PowerPoint up.
Well, good afternoon,
Welcome,
Madam
Cheryl.
Chair, State Board members, Commissioner Watson. Thank you for the opportunity to give you an update on innovative breakfast and our breakfast leadership grant. I think you all agree with me that breakfast is a big deal. And in Kansas, we have been doing our best to lead the way to grow breakfast participation, because as you all were aware of after we presented last week and after Mr. Porter went with us to Chicago, we found that we were not where we wished we could be in meeting the needs of Kansas students. So at that Breakfast Leadership Grant Institute that we went to in Chicago, we set a goal that we would increase statewide breakfast average daily participation by 5%, which was a big goal. That's a lot of kids per day. But we wanted to have a big goal because we know how important breakfast is. And in Kansas, one of my favorite quotes is, "Problems are only opportunities in work clothes." You know, I grew up on the farm, and hard work doesn't scare me. And I think the Child Nutrition Wellness team, we have a lot of people that are not scared of hard work, and we have a lot of food service directors and administrators throughout the state who have been willing to go the extra mile to add innovative breakfast. So without further from me, Jill Ladd, our assistant director, she is back in an assistant director role as of yesterday. So pleased about that. She has been leading the efforts for innovative breakfast and done an amazing job. So she will be giving you the update.
Yeah.
Do you need these or probably not?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So, how are we going to reach that 5%? We had 3 strategies. One was to award funding for up to 20 districts to implement innovative breakfast delivery models. The second strategy was to cultivate a network of breakfast champions so that others could help other food service directors get this started in their schools. And then we also wanted to explore strengthening state breakfast policy. So when everyone went to Chicago, we had about $60,000 that we were going to be able to expend. And the group decided they really wanted to award those to districts in the form of sub-grants. Well, we were actually able to award just under $250,000 to Kansas schools to implement innovative breakfast strategies. Midwest Dairy Council came through with some extra funding that allowed us to award in the spring of 2019 to 35 districts and 42 schools. And I'm really excited that we were able to award an additional 18 districts and 24 schools who are going to start innovative breakfast delivery models this fall as kids come back to school. We know that we are seeing the momentum. We're taking lots of phone calls about people that want to start innovative breakfast, and so we think this is going to continue, and it's really fun to see that ball rolling. So this has helped a lot of people get over that first hurdle of starting an innovative breakfast model. This is a list of our 2019 grantees. So all over the state, and big, small, medium-sized. So when it came to that strategy to identifying breakfast champions, we wanted to be able to identify people that were doing great things out in the field and help to inspire others to also start innovative breakfast models. So we have highlighted different districts through our Sunflower Spotlights. In our monthly update that we send out through Child Nutrition and Wellness, we've been highlighting districts that have started innovative models, expanded innovative models, and that has really helped encourage and inspire others to start those as well. So one way that we knew that how you're going to increase breakfast participation is by getting breakfast out of the cafeteria. Through those innovative models such as second chance breakfast, where it's offered between first and second period, breakfast in the classroom, which is really popular in the elementary level, as well as a grab and go breakfast. So you will see here that traditional breakfast is still being offered. It's been pretty consistent for the last 4 years, but you'll see that second chance breakfast has continued to increase. Breakfast in the classroom has gone up, as well as grab and go breakfast. And I'm excited to see what the 1920 school year looks like, to see what those numbers look like. And I know that those are going to be higher as well. So we have lots of schools that are offering breakfast in innovative ways. So that goal was to increase breakfast participation by 5%. Each month I would get the data and start to crunch it. And we were able to serve over 750,000 more breakfasts this school year as we were compared to last school year. Where that comes in the 5%, we didn't quite hit that. We hit 3.43%, which is an additional 4,100 kids per day that ate breakfast this last school year. But if you'll see down, April and May, we had really big gains. And so I think we're going to continue to see those gains come into the fall, because those spring funding funding opportunities that I showed you, those didn't hit until January. And so a lot of our schools didn't get started until March, April, some even started in May. And we know that all those schools are coming back on with innovative models this year. And we have even more that are starting. And one thing that's really exciting is that, so if you look at just breakfast change compared to the previous school years, sometimes you would see a negative, but there would be a lot less school days. And so I took total breakfast served divided by total days that were served. And in school year 18 and 19, we were always higher each month. So that means that we were meeting more kids' needs with breakfast. So I want to highlight some of those breakfast champions that we had throughout the state. Wichita Public Schools was one of our big champions this year. David was part of that leadership team that went to Chicago, and he is right here. So come on in. He had a prior engagement, and so I was going to present for him if he couldn't come. But this is David Paul. He's presented with us before. Dutch is doing awesome things with Wichita Public Schools as the food service director. So I will. He was here. Okay. Oh, Jim, he's right here.
That's a nice place to be. Hello, my name is David Paul, Director of Nutrition Services, Wichita Public Schools. Very briefly, we had quite a successful 18-19 school year with our alternative breakfast programs. We actually implemented in 17 schools. However, 6 of those were towards the end of the school year. And we had increase in average daily participation about 1,500 meals per day, or 36% of the schools that were participating. So think of approximately 1/3 of the schools that implemented late in the school year, what kind of potential we have for next year. Yeah, and we also want to share our strength, No Kid Hungry Award. That was good, but that was all last year. So we can go up 2 probably. So obviously, we've been working on our 2019-20 initiatives, and we're going to continue to expand our alternative breakfast programs in our secondary schools. Starting tomorrow, we're going to offer breakfast in the classroom and universal free breakfast at Cessna Elementary School. Ooh, that's a typo. And then we're going to be doing a second chance breakfast or breakfast after the bell in all of our elementary schools starting tomorrow. And we're also exploring universal free district-wide. Any questions? All right.
Thank you, David. We are so thrilled that so many more kids in Wichita are eating breakfast as a result of all of your efforts. And we know that takes a lot of extra time to get those things started and implemented. So Garden City, many of you I'm sure have heard about the fire that happened at the Tyson plant. So Tracy Johnson was going to join us, but has stayed back so that she can help ensure that all of those families are, if they are eligible for free and reduced meals, can have those when school starts later this week. When we met with Garden City, they were one of our target districts, and they really had an aha moment in one of our meetings. Because they realized that none of their band students had the opportunity to eat breakfast. They had a 0-hour band that went right into first hour band, and none of those kids in the traditional model could eat breakfast. And so they really wanted to get started with a second chance breakfast so that all of their students would have the opportunity, and it just went over great. So they've started at their high school. They've also started at both of their middle schools, intermediate school, and you can see here, 239 more students per day, 156 more students per day. So just doing some great things there in Garden City to increase breakfast participation. So now I'm going to have Brooke Brubeck with USD 113 Prairie Hills come up and share some of the great things that they have done as it comes to innovative breakfast. And I will have to say that Brooke is like the champion social media person. She is all over it. Cheryl will always come in and be like, did you see Brooke's post about this? So you are just really wonderful about sharing the success of your programs, and excited that you can be with us today.
Hi, our district received the No Kid Hungry Share Our Strength Midwest Dairy Grant, and we decided that we wanted to target 3 of our schools. We have 5 in our district, so we targeted the high school and the middle school in Sabetha, and then the Axtell K through 12 serving only the middle school and high school students. And our participation, particularly at Sabetha Middle School, you can see just really went through the roof. Our daily participation almost tripled at the middle school, and the increases that we saw for our free and reduced students, because we find that as our kids get older, less and less of our free and reduced students start joining us for breakfast. And those are really the students that we want to reach the most. So we saw huge gains in participation for them across all 3 schools. And now, because of the success of this program, we are beginning a breakfast after the bell service at our Wetmore Academic Center site also. So we're very excited that we're now able to offer it to all of our upper grade levels. So, any questions? Okay, thank you. Did you have questions?
I'm sure board members will have questions when we get everybody presented. I'm sure they will. I have no doubt.
Thank you, Brooke. So what are our next steps? You'll remember that that third strategy was to explore strengthening state breakfast policy. So that's something that, as a board, if you want to take that up, that is something to explore. Also, we want to continue to celebrate the successes. So we plan to continue highlighting districts that are starting innovative breakfast models. And we also just want to continue encouraging innovative breakfast delivery models, especially as it relates to innovative school districts and how, we can fit in with that model, trying to work with food service so that they can see how they can fit into that larger plan to meet students' needs so that we can ensure the success of all students in Kansas. So, any questions?
Okay, we do have an opportunity for some questions here. Before we do, I want to thank the 3 that presented today. I mean, you've had a large district, kind of a mid-sized district, and then a smaller district. So I would assume when you have, and there's probably meetings for your food service directors at certain points in time, so these folks can kind of share some of the successes they've had, because I think was it last year that we first began to become aware of this, and we were all excited about the opportunity to have more kids eating breakfast and more opportunities for some innovative ways. So thanks to everybody, and we look like we're going to be expanding to some other districts, so that'll be really good to hear about. Okay, so again, I think my thing may not be working, so Ann, did you have a question or a comment?
Thank you. For a district like Wichita, how do you pay for all those breakfasts? Do the feds pick up the free breakfast when you go universal, or how does that work?
Right, so there is some mathematical equation to work with when you're thinking about universal free. With universal free, you still get the reimbursement based on what the student qualifies for. And so if you have a high enough free and reduced percentage, it kind of covers that cost of the paid. You do get a small amount of federal reimbursement for the paid students as well. But for instance, in Olathe Public Schools, they have figured that if they are about 90% free and reduced, it covers the cost. And the increased participation that you get because everybody can eat for free helps kind of decrease you're not losing money.
If you're not, I'm surprised Olathe was that high. But because Topeka is
a couple
only
of schools.
Oh, just by individual.
Yeah,
building.
but just by individual.
Oh,
they have 5
okay.
elementary schools that they offer universal
That
free
makes
at,
sense.
and then they do breakfast in the classroom at some of their other schools. I don't know if David could speak to what their numbers are in order to make that happen at a particular school, but it's all school dependent, just because based on labor costs and food costs and things like that.
That makes sense.
Thank you. Last year, our free and reduced percentage was about 75%. And so if we were to go district-wide with this initiative, we would be utilizing some non-federal funds to cover some of those revenues.
Yeah, I was going to say Topeka's similar, 75% free and reduced. But so if you're at that level and you decide to go universal, then the district does wind up picking up
or our fund
or
balance.
Somebody.
So for the food service, the federal food service fund can be used, like Wichita School District tends to have an excess, they exceed their 3-month operating balance, those extra funds can be used to provide either like not charging the reduced students or providing universal free breakfast. So as a school district, they are willing to use those excess federal funds to benefit the families and students, which I definitely applaud the district for that decision.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would think if you do that, it might help with some of the
stigma.
well, and that, and then the fact that you can get people through quicker, and you can do a lot of things as far as maybe being efficient with, a little more efficient, I would think. Having been in a number of those cafeterias for breakfast and lunch, I can envision that running smoother even. So, other questions? Steve?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I was a youth, I was active and healthy, and now I have a sedentary lifestyle and I overeat. And since some of our children are sort of like I am now, do we have mechanisms to curb the appetites of those who are a bit portly before their time, when students want to eat and we really would rather actually that they don't? Can we insist that they eat a pear or an apple instead of the Fruit Loops, that kind of thing?
Well, the National School Lunch, and Jill, you can chime in too, and school breakfast programs, the meal patterns are based on the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, and so a lot of research goes into those, and of course they're full of lean protein, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and low-fat dairy. And so there are now actually calorie levels they must maintain within on the meals. There aren't the free seconds, etc. And what has been found, there is recent research, and we can share that with the board, that since the new meal pattern began back in about 2013, there has been an increase in the healthy eating index and also decrease in obesity and increased in consumption of fruits and vegetables pretty much across the board in the United States. And so I do feel that we are making a difference when we make these healthy meals available like Wichita school-wide. You know, instead of stopping at the quick shop, kids can actually get the grab and go right there in the cafeteria with the healthy food items. Thank you for your interest.
There, and David, maybe you can speak to this. I know, and I missed this, sorry, I know too much about Wichita, but they had that program a couple years ago with the veggies and the fruits that they brought into the schools at the elementary. That was quite an innovative program.
Yes, ma'am. We are currently participating in the program and have for many, many years. I believe this will be the start of our 8th year. And we have had as many as 35 schools participate. This year, I believe our number is 31, possibly 32. And we started with 8 way back in the day before my time there.
Are these primarily the elementary schools, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a neat program from what I remember.
It is one of the coolest things we do.
Yeah, yeah.
We provide some very unique offerings to our students and things that you and I do not eat every day or every week or even a few times a year. So we're really excited about the program.
And the kids,
They love it.
Yeah, they do.
They love it.
Yeah. Other questions, board members? Yes, Mr. Porter.
I just want to put it in perspective. You know, we have a 5% goal, and we were considered crazy because the other. Now we had schools with states that are represented that are much larger than us, but you know, percentages are percentages, and so the common percentage of increase goals in other states was 1. And so, to put that in perspective, it was a challenge goal. We may not have made it last year, but it certainly appears that we're going to exceed it this year if things go as planned. And I think that it takes leadership, and thanks for the leadership, and it takes guts to jump out like that. And I appreciate the willingness to do that, even though I was pushing for a higher goal.
Janet Waugh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I was just thinking, how many districts do we have that do not offer a breakfast program? Do you know?
Well, as you all know, that list with waivers has decreased dramatically. We have 2 districts, and I believe one of those actually now is actually serving breakfast this year. So I think we're down to 1 district.
Yeah, I had one in my district that did not. And they told me they had started, I believe, last year. You were there, I think, Randy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a more affluent district. And they said they were shocked at how many parents were thrilled because they just didn't have time to feed their students and were willing to pay, and they were very excited about it. So it went over much better than they even anticipated.
Right.
So,
When you think about how many folks eat breakfast out anymore.
Yes.
And the time crunch with families, it's such an economical way to serve your kids. It's just a good value for Kansas families.
So I just remember that one specifically because you think about children who can't afford it, but there are parents that can that still take advantage of it.
It really
Yes.
is good for all kids to
Yes.
have breakfast.
Thank you
and
so
if they
much.
eat at home, that's great. But a lot of folks, the families don't have time in the morning.
Exactly. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for your support of this initiative. And we do hope if you do want to go further with any kind of policy considerations, please let us know and we'll work with you on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I think we get to present some awards, don't we?
Get to do fun.
Oh,
Fun
exciting.
things.
So we've got some more folks
Absolutely.
coming in. Welcome. We're glad to have everybody here today. Okay. So it looks like we've got some plaques coming and everything
do.
else. So this is exciting.
Yes,
So
and we would appreciate the board members taking pictures with our awardees after, if we could have you do that and
we
take the
would be
time.
honored.
And
Absolutely.
Peggy is so organized, she even has an order of pictures for us. So awardees, please know that stick around, right? This is the fun. This is the fun part.
Nobody leaves so we can take pictures afterwards. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the KSDE Child Nutrition and Wellness Kansas Can 2018-2019 Best Practice Awards reward outstanding practice in child nutrition and wellness programs in Kansas that support your state board Kansas Can vision. So today we have several folks who are going to receive awards, and I guess I need to get that put up here, don't I? It's on the desktop. So you can see as we come up to, it's on the desktop if we, oh yeah, it's right there too. And let's start with Prairie Hills, USD 113. You already met Brooke. Come on up. And she brought with her several other folks. Please come and join her. All of the folks from Prairie Hills. We have Todd Evans, their superintendent. We have Kay Edelman, the Sabetha Kitchen supervisor and high school manager. We have Carol Baumgartner, is that right? Okay, Sabetha Middle School kitchen manager. Lori Gruber. Okay, Sabetha Elementary School kitchen manager. Lori Cameron, I was right. Yay. She is the Axtell Public Schools kitchen manager, and Deb Potter, Wetmore Academic Center kitchen manager. Very good. Prairie Hills USD 113 received funding from the Innovative Breakfast Delivery Grant for Second Chance Breakfast at 3 district buildings. Sabetha Middle School average daily participation increased 190%. Sabetha High participation increased 100%, and Axtell Public School participation increased 69%. So congratulations to all these folks who made that possible. Thank you all very much, and we'll get your pictures here in just a minute. Okay, next we have Olathe, and Olathe is receiving 2 awards today. And we were going to have Cindy actually speak, but they had a prior engagement right next to it. Cindy, you might wave. She is one of our breakfast champions. She has been on our road show going across Kansas, sharing different strategies and best practices with other school districts. So we really appreciate all Cindy has done. With Cindy today, we have the director, Scott Kingery, right here. And you look different. I just have to let you all know that Jill and Cindy and I presented at a national conference this summer. And in the front row, there was this guy in some sort of a beard and a wig just sitting right there in front of us. It was Scott in disguise because Cindy said he couldn't go because it would make her nervous. So he dressed up. And you talk about making somebody nervous. It made me nervous. I thought we might have a stalker or something. So that was pretty fun. It was really fun. And then Stephen Newman is their dietitian, works a lot with the menus and just everything. This is the team at Olathe that makes it work. So their first certificate of recognition is in regard to increasing participation. Olathe rolled out alternative breakfast delivery models for all levels of students. Elementary students have universally free breakfast in the classroom in some of their schools, and then other schools, they are given the option to have breakfast, but it's still there for all of them. And secondary students get second chance breakfast. This is in all of their schools in Olathe. The school-branded cafeteria boosts the environment at lunchtime. So awesome work increasing participation. They also are receiving an award because of all they do to serve safe foods. They have a day-long conference on food preparation and safety that brings together 300 food service staff to participate in some of the 28 classes they offer and renew their training requirements at the beginning of each school year, right? They've just had that. When all the food service staff completes the necessary trainings in one day, it saves the district money and resources, as well as resulting in a staff that has the highest standards for food safety. So we really appreciate that. Thank you all very much. Congratulations. And you will have pictures here in just a minute. All right, Wichita Public Schools. Thank you, David. And did your principal, was he able to come? Okay, so we have David here representing. Their average daily participation for breakfast rose 36% across 18 schools that implemented an alternative breakfast delivery model, meeting an additional 1,500 meals served to students. The district reports tardiness decreased 24% in the 18 schools as a result of the breakfast models. I thought that was really important that you all heard. Innovative breakfast can help reduce tardiness. Those kids that need breakfast are going to be there to eat breakfast and on time. So thank you, David. And then for all the good news you brought about what's happening coming this school year. Okay, now we have Quality Care Services Incorporated, and if we want Brooke Wolf to come forward and Royanne and Janet. Brooke also brought her parents. I want you all to know who I know. Yeah, how proud they are of her. Let me get right here. Quality Care Services optimized its home visit and record-keeping system to save $1,664 per year, with changes to label documentation taking effect for the Child and Adult Care Food Home sponsors. Quality Care Services simplified home visits to be more time efficient by use of simplifying CACFP notebooks. So they came up with a way to help streamline, save money, and really just are doing a great job managing their finances, and we really appreciate that. Thank you, Brooke. Manhattan, Stephanie. Okay, I hadn't seen them come in yet. We have Stephanie Smith, and is Michelle with you today too? She's back working. Okay, Stephanie is the food service director at Manhattan Public Schools. They are receiving the award for providing outstanding customer service. They use Facebook, which has improved Manhattan Ogden's nutrition communications when staff began Friendly Face Fridays and use the platform for family communication. NutriSlice software provides nutrition labels from menu items to families, which is especially beneficial for children with food allergies. They can see the parents can see exactly what the kids are getting. So we really appreciate your work there, Stephanie. Thank you. And all the way from Dodge City, we have Kathy Conradi, and her husband is with her, right? He says, thank you for coming all this way. Food safety has always been a high priority in the USD 443 cafeteria, and the staff is well trained in safety procedures. New hires take the food safety basics class within the first month, and then Kathy has had all of her hires take our full 2-day safety and sanitation class within the first year. That definitely is a best practice that I don't think anyone else in the state does that, but that just shows Kathy's commitment to serving safe food. The food safety and sanitation class then is renewed every 3 years, and so she makes sure that her staff stay up to date. Kathy is also, by the way, one of our breakfast champions, and they have started innovative breakfast now in their secondary schools. And you know, you're
in elementary this year.
Isn't that awesome? And so there's a great need for that, and she's also been working on after-school snacks and meals for her kids.
And supper. We're going to try suppers, I think, this year.
So kudos to Kathy and her staff, and thanks for coming all the way from Dodge City.
Well, thank you very much.
And we're sure going to get your picture here in just a second. And now we have Haven, USD 312. And we have Cherie Jones, the food service director, Travis Moore, the high school principal, and Alice Glenn Denning, grade school principal, right? Got the names. And they are getting 2 awards. The first one on implementing innovative meal pattern strategies. Students at Haven High School asked for more lunch choices, and the nutrition staff delivered. Using Google, students make an online order to choose between 4 options daily. The cooks use the results of the orders to create the right amount of food, cutting both waste and excess. Plus, they get great choices. I just think that's awesome. Thank you so much. And then also for celebrating nutrition and wellness special events, the 2nd annual Family Farm Fun Food Fitness Day brought local farmers and the community together. The event featured carnival games and a free farmers market for families to pick fresh produce and healthy snacks. Local 4-H participants also set up at the event to display projects, so bringing that community together with our farm to school efforts. These folks are a big supporter of Farm to Plate, and I really appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Garden City can't be with us. As we said before, Tracy was going to come, but she is busy working to try to make sure. Most of her staff had family that was working at the Tyson plant, so she's having to help cover. And then, of course, a lot of students and families are worried about what the future holds there. So our thoughts are with them. Social Innovation Laboratory is one of our summer sponsors, and I think you all are going to find this extremely interesting. Here today we have Matt Shepard. This is Matt right here. We have Bonnie Shepard. Bonnie is the daughter. You better come up here too. Jennifer Ogilby and Will Rapp. Did I say that right? These folks have really had an innovative strategy to serve summer meals in Kansas. Actually, the first time I met Matt was at the Kansas, or not the Kansas, it was a National Rural Hunger Summit. He was selected to be a speaker because of this unique concept. So let me tell you a little bit about it. They have what is called That Pop-Up Restaurant in Strong City, which is a popular summer food service program site that offers buildable meals. They have a base, a protein, toppings. This model ensures the meals meet the guidelines for reimbursement. The participation rate is awesome there. Again, it's like a pop-up restaurant in Strong City to make sure the needs of those children are met where they're kind of in the middle of a food desert. So kudos to you all for being innovative in that way and taking time to feed children when school is out. Thank you. So those are our awardees, a great group of awardees for 18-19.
Yeah, that's a fantastic group, and what a variety of things going on. So exciting. Okay, we are going to do pictures. So I do have the list for the order.
Okay, do you have it? Do you
I have one.
I have it too somewhere here.
Okay, well, looks like to me we're going to start with Haven. And Ben, you'll join us, and then we'll have Emporia, which is the group we just had, the innovative group, right? Is that right? Social Innovation Lab. So that will be next, which is also Ben. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you. We are going to act on the Professional Practices Commission. We have 3 cases that we're going to take a look at. And the first one, and I'm going to tell you page 113 in your agenda, is a professional practices recommendation that has to do with a censure recommendation. And the case information is right after that. So, and Linda was not present when they heard these cases, is my understanding, and Nathan is not available. So Scott's going to answer any questions or any clarification that we need on any of these. So we're going to handle each one of these separately, is my understanding. So we have case 18 PPC-28. Scott, any clarifications that you need on this one?
If there are any questions you have procedurally, I'm more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, you've been provided the summaries.
Okay, board members, on this one, again, the actual recommendation is on page 113, and just a reminder, the initial order information starts on 115. So this was in your packet.
It does say this in the packet, but I would share with you the original order was, or original recommendation was for this particular licensee to be suspended until evidence of the diversion completion had been provided, and I have received that prior to it ever coming to you.
Okay, so now it is a recommendation for censure in the licensee. So, Mr. Porter?
I move that the Kansas State Board of Education follow the recommendations of the Professional Practice Commission and censure the license of case number 18 PPC 20, is that 6 or 8?
28.
28.
Okay, so we have a recommendation for a motion here. Do we have a second? Mr. Roberts? Okay, any comments, questions, or discussion? Okay, if not, we'd call the motion. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, that looks like a 9-0 to me. Okay, the next one. Yep, 121. This particular Professional Practices Commission is no discipline, and this one, the number is 19-PPC-03. So the action is on page 121, and the initial order information starts on page 123. Any clarifications, Mr. Gordon, on this one?
No one has asked me for any clarifications, but I can answer if there are any.
Any questions, board members? Okay, I'd ask for a motion then. Mr. Roberts?
I move that the Kansas State Board of I move that the Kansas State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law regarding 19-PPC-03 and grant the licensee's application to upgrade to a professional license with no discipline.
Have a motion, do we have a second? Okay, Michelle? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing, Mr. Porter?
This was, the recommendation of the PPC was different from what the department recommended, is that correct?
The department did not file a response to the recommendations of the PPC. So
So what
there
does
is
that
no
mean?
position from the department
Okay, I'm fine.
at this point.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Dina, is that up? Okay, thank you. Okay, that looks like a 9-0. Thank you. Okay, the next one may need a little clarification. Let me get there. Okay, this one is act on a petition of reconsideration regarding the license of 19 PPC-16, and it's 129 is the page number. And the initial, well, there's a letter in there starting on page 131. So, Scott, you may, if you notice under the recommended motion in parentheses, it says grant or deny. So you might kind of explain here kind of what grant would mean or what deny would mean.
You may recall last month I actually sat with you in place of Mr. Ferguson, and there was a recommendation that this particular licensee would be granted his license and merely be censured on the condition, and this was a specific order from the PPC, on the condition that he have his school administration provide written verification to my office prior to the board meeting that he had explained to them his underlying criminal conduct, the diversion, and his pending licensure issue. And that was explained to him. And then the morning of the state board meeting, as of that point, I had reached out to that school district. They didn't know anything about it, or at least the individual I spoke with didn't know anything about it. The board voted unanimously at that time to deny his renewal of his teaching license for failure to comply with the recommendations of the requirements of the PPC. I can tell you that by the end of that day, I had received an email from the same gentleman at the school district indicating that there actually had been a conversation prior to that day. So the licensee had done what he was supposed to do, but there was confusion as to where the letter was supposed to go. And the letter, which I finally got a copy of, and I've attached it in your materials, was addressed to P. Hill at 900 Southwest Jackson Street. We still have not received that letter. There's no way we're ever going to get that letter because it wasn't addressed to the state board. It wasn't addressed to the State Department. So the reconsideration, if you will, or what you're trying to decide now is, do you want to change your mind? If you vote yes, then you're changing your mind and you're giving him a license. If you're voting no, or to deny the petition, then essentially you're saying, no, we don't want to change your mind, you still don't get your license. In a nutshell, that's what a yes and a no vote would mean in this particular instance.
Okay, so do you have questions?
Yeah, the letter
Mr. Porter?
to P. Hill was sent by the applicant or by the school district?
It was sent, my understanding is it was sent by the school principal.
So it wasn't the fault. That was not directly the fault of the applicant.
I think that's probably a fair statement to make.
Other questions for Mr. Gordon? Okay, do we have a question or a motion?
Motion.
Okay, so Ben Jones.
I move that the Kansas State Board of Education grant the petition for reconsideration submitted by 19 PPC 16 and make new findings of fact and conclusions of law regarding 19 PPC 16's application to renew his license.
Okay, do we have a second? Michelle. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there further questions or further discussion? Okay, if not, I'm going to ask for a vote. All in favor to grant the petition for reconsideration, please raise your hand. Opposed? No. Was that, okay, 8 to 1. Okay. All right. Thank you for walking us through that, Mr. Gordon. Appreciate that. Okay, at this point in time, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Item 17, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay, Ann Moss, second. Dina? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain. So 801. Okay, we are going to be going into executive session. So, Janet?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Kansas State Board of Education recess into executive session to discuss the subject of potential legal matters with legal counsel, which is justified pursuant to the exception for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under COMA, in order to protect the privilege of the board's communication with an attorney on legal matters. The session will begin at what?
3:40.
Does that give you enough time? 3:40. At 3:40 for 30 minutes. No action will be taken during this session, and the open meeting will resume at 4:10. Commissioner Watson, Mark Ferguson, and Scott Gordon are invited to join this executive session.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Michelle? So it's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that's a 9-0. Thank you. Okay, so we will convene our executive session.
Board policy of receiving one month and taking action the next. And that would need a supermajority of 7 board members to approve to suspend that board rule and actually take action today.
So there has to be an affirmative motion to adjust the rules, and if less than 7 of us vote in favor of that, this becomes an action item next month.
It would become, I would say then it would become, well, or we could just say it's going to, maybe we could say, just say it's going to be a receive item this month.
However the motion is presented.
Okay. So it could just,
In order to vote for this today, 7 of us have to agree to do
yes.
That is correct.
Or we could say that we're going to make this, because right now it says it's an action item, but that's only if we have a supermajority. Otherwise, it becomes a receive item. So Scott will present to us looking at some PPC items and some possible action should we proceed that way.
So this is actually kind of a 2-part presentation update, if you will. The first half is, as you will recall, I owe you an update on an annual basis on how many cases and the types of cases that get cleared by my office with permission. Unfortunately, I'm a little overdue, so it's a 1.5 years. The numbers may be a little higher than what you're used to seeing. You'll recall that in 2014, this board authorized my office to clear certain types of cases that normally can come before the State Board of Education, but given the nature of them and the amount of time it has passed since they were occurred, my office had the authority to clear them. Those rules are, if someone is applying for their license for the first time and they have no felonies within 10 years or no misdemeanors within 5 years, I can clear them with permission. If someone is currently licensed and they have not had any new felonies within the last 5 years or new misdemeanors within the past 2 years, my office can clear them. And so we've been following those rules consistently. So January 2018 through July of 2019, the total number of cases that my office has reviewed is almost 1,040. It's 1,039 cases. That includes new applicants, that includes renewals, that includes wrap-backs, that includes just anybody that gives me a phone call or sends me an email saying, hey, I've got a concern about this particular license. Out of those 1,000 so cases, 100 of them have been cleared with permission. 67 of them have been new applicants. The renewals were 29 and wrapbacks were 4. And I will tell you that the number of renewals that I clear with permission is going to continue to go up because I review those applications every single time they go through. So eventually every new applicant will become a renewal. And there have been 4 times in the past year and a half that we received a wrapback, but the nature of that wrapback would still, basically it was old news. It was old information. Of those that my office did clear with permission, 13 professional licensees, 18 of them were initial license, and 36 were substitute license, and that's fairly consistent. It's always over half of the applications that my office reviews that has something in their background are the subs and the e-subs. The renewals, 20 of them were renewing a professional license or they were upgrading to a professional license, and 9 of them were substitute licenses that had been previously licensed and they were just renewing for another substitute. By the way, at any time, and I know I'm going really fairly quick, stop me. So of the 67 new applicants, only 9 of them had been previously convicted or received diversion for felonies, and 58 of them had been convicted or diverted for non-felony crimes involving theft, drugs, or children. And actually, none of them were involving children where there was a child victim. Because as you know, those always go before the state board. The only time that my office ever clears a case where someone could allege it was a child involved is if it's, and this, we've talked about this before, allegations that someone sold cigarettes to an undercover, someone under the age of consent for buying cigarettes, or if they had allegedly sold alcohol and it was a bust, then you've authorized me that if somebody was bartending 10 years ago and they sold to an undercover 19-year-old that they did not have to come before the state board. I think there's may have been a handful of those cases in the past year and a half total, not very many. Of the 29 renewals, there were only 4 felons and 25 those involved in misdemeanors. As usual, none of those that were prohibited under 72-1397. That's what I call the shall not ever play again list. Those are the sex offenses, the murder, vehicular homicide, the really, really bad stuff, if you will. They never get cleared with permission. If there were multiple offenses of concern, even if each case would have been clearable with permission, if they had more than one, those go through the PPC process. Nobody with any type of a sex offense and no convictions or diversions where children truly were victims. Those always come back before the Professional Practices Commission. And this is just kind of a breakdown of how many cases involve diversion, how many of them involve convictions. Other, I would tell you, that is referring to the cases that are not resolved through the criminal system. Either someone is not charged, or they were originally charged, but maybe the case gets dismissed in exchange for voluntarily surrendering their license. We have a few of those every year. It could also count on the 13 other types of cases, individuals that have lost a professional license either in Kansas or in another state, that those get reviewed by the state board and the PPC, that would qualify as others. Any questions on any of that I've covered so far? Okay. So the second half of what I have for you, yes.
I was just thinking this, has everyone that renewed their license, has everyone now been fingerprinted? Because I know my daughter had to be fingerprinted last year when she renewed. I think she was kind of at the end of the line, but I'm not sure.
My understanding is we are very close to have captured everybody. You're referring to previous to 4 years ago or 5 years ago, people were grandfathered in. And there were a lot of long-time licensees that needed to catch up. My understanding is by the end of this year, we're going to have everybody. Yeah. Or at least really close. Okay. So I do come to you with amendments or proposed amendments to Kansas Administrative Regulation 9122-1A. That's the main regulation. That is what I've placed paper copies of in front of you. so that you can see the regulation in its entirety. The last time that was actually amended was in 2000. January of last year, you authorized my office to initiate the amendments. And what I have for you now are some additional amendments, or amendments to those amendments, if you will, based on comments that we have received during the adoption process and due to the passage of KSA 74-120, or rather the amendment of 74-120 last year. And the first one I have highlighted for you, the change that's being made, or being proposed, I should say. Those of you that have seen this before, you're aware that language that is underlined, that is the new language. The typewritten words that have strike through, that's the language that we are removing. Everything that you see on there that's not highlighted comes from what you approved in January of 2018. The only change that I am asking for now is what's highlighted in yellow. 74-120 restricts state agencies, non-exempt state agencies, from using generic language. And the phrase misconduct or other just cause is seen as just being too generic and not specific enough. So the recommendation is, instead of misconduct or other just cause, including any of the following, we just adjust that to the licensee may be publicly censured by the state board for any of the following reasons. And then you have a full laundry list there. The second suggested change is in 9122 1A(a)(7). Because failure to report child abuse under 382223 is a Class B misdemeanor, the change in the statute requires that a Class B misdemeanor can only be counted against somebody if that's the only offense that they've had for a period of 5 years. In other words, if you're convicted today of failure to report child abuse and you don't have any other criminal history within the following or within 5 years after that, non-exempt state agencies are not allowed to hold that against them. So, to be in compliance with that statute, we're amending that to for a period not to exceed 5 years from the failure to report. And I will point out, if there is a felony conviction of that statute, which I will tell you I've never seen, then that would be covered under felonies anyway. So then you could use it as long as you wanted. And the last part is rather lengthy. This comes specifically from 74-120. And the language that I've used, I've literally copied and pasted from other non-exempt state agencies that have been through this process, and this is the language they used. Here's what this part of the regulation means in a nutshell. If someone petitions the State Board of Education or the State Department of Education, and by petition I mean they put it in writing saying, I have this criminal history. What are the odds of me being denied my license? Now, previously, people could call the agency and I would just tell them, well, that may or may not affect you. That's about the best that I could tell them. And we could do that by phone. And I could tell them, misdemeanor DUI, for example, no, the state board never looks at those. And I just pick on that because I get that call every fourth day. Now, because of 74-120, we would be, or pardon me, you would be required to issue a written opinion, a non-binding advisory opinion, saying whether or not that criminal or civil record would prevent them from getting licensed. So here's how the state agencies are complying with that particular statute. Is if they submit a petition to the board, and in all candor, in this regulation, when I say to the board, I mean to me. Because frankly, my office would be the agency that would handle these opinions. If they submit a petition to my office for an informal advisory opinion, then they have to include the details of the record, including a copy of the court records or any settlement agreement or any contract they may have. They have to provide that. And they have to provide an explanation as to what got them there. And they have to submit a check or a money order for $50. If they submit all of those, then my office will issue a non-binding advisory opinion to that individual. My plan, if you adopt this language, is we would have part of the licensure website would explain this part of the process. That it does not substitute for the fingerprint-based background check, and it is completely non-binding on the State Board of Education, and it is dependent entirely on the information they've provided at the time that they provided their petition. In other words, if you only tell me about your misdemeanor theft from 20 years ago, I'm only going to base my opinion on that misdemeanor theft from 20 years ago. If it turns out we got more information than that, well then that advisory opinion is null and void. But then we have 120 days to give them that written opinion. It's just something that was added to 74-120, and so we would be in compliance with the statute then. Any questions on this part? Yes. So, there are parts that I'm suggesting removing from the proposed amendments that we had brought to you in January. The board had requested, and I believe this was largely my office had asked for it and the PPC had asked for it, that you would be authorized to publicly censure someone for a definite period of time or indefinitely. That doesn't need to be in regulation, and I don't know in all candor how exactly that would work. So the board can issue orders that you have to report it for a certain amount of time if you want to. Or we will take it off of our public website after a certain amount of time. That doesn't mean the censure goes away. And so that part of the regulation we're suggesting take away. And then under G2B, the question is whether or not you could order that an individual is permanently ineligible for licensure. In all candor, that was kind of a Hail Mary to see if you would have the authority to permanently ban someone from ever applying for licensure. And I don't believe so. I could name the two applicants that came to mind, which is why that rule was originally suggested. And frankly, we don't know. I think that you may lose a constitutionality argument if you were to try to permanently ban someone from life without ever giving them the opportunity to show proof of rehabilitation. Doesn't mean you ever have to give them a license. You're probably going to lose on constitutionality if you try to ban them from life. So we're suggesting removing that language. Any questions? Comments, questions, anything I can?
Board members, do you have questions of Scott on any of these recommendations? Ben Jones.
On that, whatever, that section C. Yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to figure out how to put this without being on straight language, I guess. How much more work would this put on your department?
If I have to put out a written opinion every single time someone asks, quite a bit. That's going to be there'd be an intern's half of her job probably.
Yeah, but how many people are actually going to pay $50?
Then they don't get a written opinion from me.
I know.
Yeah, no, yes, I understand that. I don't know the answer to that question. Again, that would be on top of the $50 they're going to have to pay for their fingerprint and all of their other application fees.
So they would have to do that before they could do this?
No, this would be entirely separate.
Okay.
No one has to do this.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if they choose to do this, they could do this before they do the rest of the licensure.
I think the basis or the purpose for this is so that someone doesn't go through 4 years of college to be a teacher just to find out later on that your 2 allegations of attempted murder are going to stop you from being a licensed teacher. And now, yes, so absolutely, I think the goal is before you start spending money to go down this road, have some idea of what are the odds of being denied.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
That vantage point, because to me it just looked like a big bureaucratic nightmare, and that just said everything right there.
Sure.
Other questions on these regs? Anybody? No questions on regs? Okay, now we have two options. This has been requested to be an action item. And for it to be an action item, we would have to vote to, because we haven't received it before today. I personally am a little uncomfortable not having read these and studied them a little bit before voting on them. So we would have to vote to suspend our rules and have a supermajority of 7, correct?
Yes.
To suspend the rules to be able to be voted on as an action item. I would assume if we don't vote on these to be an action item today, then they'd become a receive item today and they would come back to us in September as an action item.
That's right.
So if we take no action, if we make no motion, we don't vote today.
That's the way I see it. Yes.
For your office, is there a downside for just pushing this back 1 month? Does this cause you any hardship or heartburn?
Not really. Okay. It's I would just say, and I mentioned this before, the only reason why the suggestion was to receive and act on the same month was purely because you all have been waiting patiently since January of 2018 to have these pushed through. But if the board needs the time, the board needs the time, and that doesn't affect my work at all. Well, the only slight caveat to that, 74-120 requires state agencies to have been in compliance within 120 days of them passing. Well, it's been a year.
Well, we've
Now,
tried.
We have tried, absolutely, and I believe we are in compliance with that statute, but for very minor tweaks. So you're asking about my work, doesn't affect it. Does not affect it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So do we have any motion to move this to an action item for today? Seeing none, we'll bring it
I'll
back
see you
in
next month.
September.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You could still take a vote to receive it.
Can it just be a receive item? Do we have to have a motion?
Generally, you vote to receive it.
It just shows up on the agenda, right, to receive?
Yeah.
It just, I mean, if it's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda. Yeah, we're going to vote next month. Okay, seeing nothing else on the agenda except the word recess, I am going to declare us in recess until tomorrow morning. We are here at 9 o'clock, so we are in recess. Thank you very much.